Good evening. Welcome to the Village Board meeting for the Village of Pleasantville. Today is Monday, May 9. You can watch us on Optimum or Verizon Cable TV, and you can pick up an on-demand webcast of this and previous meetings within a couple of days at pctv76.org. Our next regular meeting is 2 weeks from today, Monday, May 23, with a work session at 7 and a regular meeting at 8. So I will take advantage of a captive audience to make a couple of announcements, and then we'll get to the matter that most of you folks are here about, which is a public hearing on the introductory local law regarding leaf blowers. But let me just make a couple of announcements that I think are worth folks paying attention to. The first is, amid the significant progress we've seen in the last some months in the world of the pandemic, the recent numbers are headed in the wrong direction. In the first 8 days of May, the state system reports 30 new cases in the village of Pleasantville. That almost certainly is a fairly significant undercount, because the only people that are ending up in the state list are those who got tested in some hospital, clinic, doctor's office where their results are reported. Many people are testing positive at home, and those numbers never end up in the system. So 30 new cases in the last 5 days in the village of Pleasantville. And according to the county numbers, again, just in the New York State system, as of today, we have 60 active cases. That's a very much higher number than we have reported recently. And I think the schools have seen somewhat the same, with I think about 24 new cases in the 3 schools that according to Dr. Dessau, showed up in the results from the weekend. So takeaway from that is, good news is hospitalizations and blessedly deaths are way down, but COVID is not. So just pay attention if you possibly can. And then I just wanted to remind folks of 4 big days coming up. We have Pleasantville Day on May 21. Saturday, May 21, we have our Memorial Day ceremony back to our usual format, starting at Bedford Road School and marching down to Memorial Plaza. That is on Monday, May 30. Happy news that the Pleasantville Volunteer Fire Department Parade is back, and that is on Friday evening, June 3. And the 16th annual Pleasantville Music Festival is back Saturday, July 9. So P-Ville Day, Memorial Day, Fire Department Parade, and the Music Festival. Mark your calendars. So I have a few more announcements, but I'll save them for afterwards, because I don't want to leave you folks here longer than you need to be. Is there a motion to open the public hearing on introductory local law 3 of 2022 concerning seasonal limitations on fuel-powered motorized leaf blowers?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. I should have mentioned at the outset that Michael Peppard, Trustee Michael Peppard, is here via Zoom, unable to be here tonight, but the current rules and likely the future rules allow a board member to be a part of a meeting to vote and to comment. So Michael is here. I think folks can probably see him on that screen. So Nicole, you want to just describe the proposed regulation?
Okay. First of all, thank you for being here in person. It's always nice to see people, especially these days. A little bit of background for those of you who haven't been following the discussion the whole time. There's been a conversation around leaf blowers for many years, but we started hearing a lot more complaints after the shutdown, when a lot more people started working from home. So that generated, in August of 2020, our Conservation Advisory Council gave a presentation to the board about the noise pollution and air pollution caused by gas-powered leaf blowers. And at the time, they proposed a ban on all leaf blowers except for fall and spring cleanup. We then hosted a couple of public discussions on the matter and conducted a survey a little over a year ago. And through this process, we arrived at the present proposed law, which is a compromise between what was originally proposed and in the range of views on the issue. So just to explain, so this local law is in fact an amendment to our noise ordinance, so it falls under the rubric of the noise ordinance. The proposed local law would prohibit the use of gas-powered leaf blowers from May 15th through the end of September. Electric leaf blowers would be permitted during the summer, and all leaf blowers would continue to be permitted for fall and spring cleanup. In the event of a storm, the Superintendent of Public Works would be allowed to declare a state of emergency that would suspend the prohibition on gas-powered leaf blowers for a maximum of 7 days. Those of us who worked on this law wanted there to be as few exemptions as possible in keeping with the spirit of Pleasantville, in which we all do our part. There are, however, a couple of limited exemptions. The law allows a temporary exemption for the golf course, specifically within the country club, allowing that the golf course requires a special type of maintenance, and that the country club feels it will take a little while for them to be able to transition their maintenance to the golf course to the use of electric equipment. So the wording, which I have somewhere, allows it until, for 2 years, is that right, Eric?
Yes.
I think I have it here. Okay, so until May 15th, 2024, they would have an exemption, and then that exemption would sunset. The second possible exemption relates to the school district. If you looked at the attachment under the public hearing, you saw that there were 2 versions of the law. One of them is labeled amended, and that's because since we posted the public hearing, we got some feedback from the school district. In general, they are on board with complying with the ordinance should we pass it, but they ask for special exemptions for their turf fields. Their turf fields have an infill that's comprised of organic materials, coconut husk and corn infill. And when they have particularly heavy rains, they use leaf blowers to blow them back down. So we're hoping that in time they'll be able to use electric leaf blowers to do the job, but we have provisionally set aside this exemption for them. Other than that, there are no exemptions. Our Parks Department is ready to switch to a limited use of electric-powered leaf blowers in the summer months. Our Climate Smart Task Force has been working with them on this transition. And you may have also noticed another thing that the Climate Smart Task Force did in anticipation of this proposal is a rebate program to help residents switch from gas-powered to electric leaf blowers. Okay, that's it. That's an overview.
So let me also add, we've been receiving emails. Obviously, they can come in any form to us or to the village office. We have an email address, leafblowers@pleasantville-ny.gov, and have received many emails. All of those have been read by us there, and they are permanently part of the record. And as likely all of you in the room know, there are folks who feel very strongly on this subject in both directions, and for various kinds of reasons. But I do want everybody to understand that a couple of people have sent emails saying, why are you even talking about this? This is silly. So silly is obviously that person's view, but the reason we're talking about it is that there are a whole lot of our neighbors here in the village of Pleasantville who are very, very concerned about this and who feel like it is a significant problem for them in their neighborhood. So in the spirit of Pleasantville life, I hope we can be respectful of everybody's circumstances, and I invite anyone who would like to comment on this to come to the podium. We need your name and address.
Can
you want to say something, David, first?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Peter said. On the board, we take everything that all of you care about very seriously. This is one of those Solomonic kind of decisions where inevitably people will be harmed, whether we do nothing or we do something. Inevitably people will be inconvenienced. Inevitably is not an ideal solution. There is no ideal solution. So please, whatever you say, just realize that the other people who disagree with you in this room are just as sincere and being just as honest as you are. Thank you.
I just want to ask a logistical thing. There probably will be people on the Zoom who would like to comment as well. Should we start with the in-person comments?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that we start with the in-person comments. There are a bunch of folks on the Zoom, and so if you guys can wait until we've gotten through comments here in the room. We'll then ask folks in the attendee pane to hit the raised hand, and then we'll work our way through those comments. But let me invite anyone here in the room who would like to speak to come to the podium. Again, we need your name and address, and happy to hear your thoughts.
Also, I'd like to add, in order to try to be as efficient as possible, let's try to stay on this actual topic that we're discussing. I know that in reading a lot of emails, a lot of some that are against this will automatically start talking about different things, the roads, the parking, all these different issues, which I completely understand. All very valid issues to bring, but here we have to try to stay on topic about this specific law that we're trying to pick. I know there's a lot of different issues that maybe people have, but we have to try to be really staying as much as we can just on this, because that's the only way we're going to be able to efficiently hear everyone out.
Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Hi.
Name and address, even though we know it.
Okay. Tom Rooney, 26 Hillview Drive, Pleasantville.
Thank you.
I spoke on this topic many times, so we won't go backwards, we'll go forward. I was and still am opposed to this leaf blower ordinance. It's discriminatory towards the homeowner. The proposal that you made on the other side of me being in disagreement is somewhat reasonable. However, the time frame, I believe it's not long enough to provide for the leaves before they fall, after they fall. So I'm asking that if you do go through with this, that your proposed May 15th to October 1st be changed to possibly from, say, Memorial Day to Labor Day, which is traditionally the summer months, which is where other people whom have spoken are complaining about the noise in the summer. So I ask that to be considered if you go through with a time frame to just lengthen that time frame a little bit. The second point that I want to make, you brought it up, I didn't realize you would. The exclusion of the country club because they're not ready at this time to convert to electric power. Well, that, once again, in my opinion, is also discriminatory against people like myself who do my own lawn cleanup. When I do my own lawn cleanup, if I'm running a gas-powered equipment for 10 minutes, I'm done. This is something that I'm saying that if the country club, which is a private organization, for profit, with their golf course, their homes in there are no different than my home on Hillview Drive. If they are not ready to convert over to this, well then why am I? I am not ready to convert over to this as well. The Pleasantville School, the town parks, as you mentioned, they're part of this village more than anybody else. If they're not ready to do this or have excuses, well, they're telling us that the electric machines are not as good as the gas.
Tom, can I just clarify quickly? A couple of things about the country club. I totally hear you. But just to be clear, it would only apply to the golf course. It would not apply to the residences on the country club.
Okay.
And that's totally up for debate as to whether that's fair or not. The parks would adhere to this law, absolutely. The Parks Department is, and we felt strongly that that was important, that it was not fair to ask something of the homeowners that we were not asking of our own village staff. So they are prepared to do this.
Well, let's back up to the golf course, on the golf course. It's not my problem that they can't handle their golf course with the electric equipment. So maybe the electric equipment shouldn't be used at all. These are just my points. It's discriminatory to say that they can have an extension or possibly never have to do this whereas myself and the other Pleasantville residents will have to abide by whatever the board chooses to do. It's discriminatory and it might lead to other type of legal situations, but I said my piece. If you are going to do this, and I'm sure you are going to do something, at least consider the time frame that I recommended. And if you do, what's good for one is good for all. The country club should not be excluded from any of this. Frankly, I don't care about the golf course. I don't play golf on that golf course. I don't live on that golf course. My lawn is my golf course. Maybe I'll set up a putting range on my front lawn. Now I'm a golf course. I'm serious. I will do that because this is absolutely ridiculous. You said many times ago, because I mentioned about the lawn contractors, the contractors versus the homeowners. And you said, well, you can't have one rule for the contractor and for the homeowners. Okay, if that's true, then you are once again in arrears with what you're saying. You're making one deal for the country club, one deal for the contractors and the homeowners. This is once again discriminatory. So I don't know how anybody else in this room feels, but I hope there's some people who can see what you are proposing on one side might be not so bad in terms of the overall picture, but you are discriminating against a few who do not have the power, say, of the country club. As far as anything else goes with the village, I know the village has invested in electric equipment. I'm sure they will be on board. But what I'm saying is it's discriminatory, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay,
So
thank you, Tom.
Thank you for listening to me.
Much appreciated.
Hi, my name's Claire Schiffman. I live at 197 Broadway. I'd like to speak in favor of this partial ban. I wish it were longer. I would disagree with Mr. Rooney that we should start again at Labor Day. There aren't a lot of leaves on the ground at Labor Day, so I don't see the point in that. But what I wanted to say is that I think, like a lot of people, I was attracted to Pleasantville because of a lot of pleasant things about this village, basically, and that it was, quite frankly, to put it simply, with no insult intended to anybody present or anybody not present, that it wasn't Scarsdale. It wasn't a land of pristine lawns and sort of splendid suburban isolation. It was a real town with real people. People got together, people acted like a village, and there wasn't that an obsession with, what our yards and our driveways looked like. I think we care a lot about other village values. And frankly, it feels to me like the peace of that village has largely been destroyed by the sound of incessant yard work going on. A lot of people have noticed it more because they're home now since the pandemic, but others of us have always noticed it. And I think it's a shame to see that peacefulness shattered. It makes it less like a town that many of us want to live in, and all in the interest of what? Of having a driveway that's, completely free of any debris. So I hope Mr. Rooney is correct that in fact you will be doing something along these lines. As I said, I think it could be more drastic. I think I do feel for people who've invested in the gas-powered equipment, but the handwriting's been on the wall for a long time, and I think there's been time for people to see that handwriting and adjust. I mean, the same thing has happened with our automobiles over the years, and peace and quiet aside, the damage to the environment, which other people can speak to much better than I can, is so significant that it's not just about our peace and quiet, it's about our whole world. So I hope you can pass this. Thanks.
Thank you. Other speakers?
Good evening. My name is Seth Gladstone. I'm at 35 Clark Street. First, I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the board for giving the community another opportunity to speak on this. I recall in one of these public comment sessions last year, somebody who I believe opposed the ordinance mentioned curb appeal as a rationale for opposing this. I can't imagine, in my time here in Pleasantville, I can't imagine anything being a greater detriment to the appeal, to the desirability, to the pleasantness of this village than the scourge and blight of a literal rumbling, storming sound wave coming up and down one's block from yard to yard with a mob of these leaf blowers day after day, month after month. I can't imagine anything being a greater detriment to appeal for this village. I do have two criticisms of the bill. One, to the point that the first gentleman made, I can't imagine why a for-profit golf course would be excluded from this bill that is in the public good. I don't understand that. Two, I would say that this bill doesn't go far enough, and I think we ought to be banning these machines for 12 months a year, forever. I think the state will probably take action on this at some point in the near future, but I would love it if the Village of Pleasantville showed some leadership and was a real leader on this issue and went ahead and did it all the way. In the meantime, I would urge the board to approve and make this ordinance the rule of the village, and then work to strengthen it from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sophie Worley. I live at 23 Lake Street. I have two children. They are on the autism spectrum, and auditory occurrences are difficult for them to process sometimes. During the pandemic, it really bothered my son especially while we had to do school from home. It really was like that. Everybody was using the leaf blowers, and it was hard for him to concentrate. We actually don't own a leaf blower. Tom, I don't know where you're sitting, but it's actually quite easy to just mow your leaves and use the mulch that you gather from those leaves to feed your trees or put it back into your soil. Over the winter, it decomposes, and then it really is like a lovely, dark, silky mulch that are great for the flowers and actually great for the trees. The soil needs all the nutrients back. So there are really good ways of gardening that are easier and much cheaper than owning these fossil fuel based expensive equipment that break, and you have to spend then so much money to fix it or buy a new one. It's just not future forward. And I would really like to encourage the village to pass this. And as far as the golf club goes, I'm sure they also have a lawnmower. Perhaps they can get a stronger lawnmower that can handle leaves, but the mulching is very important. I think their grass might even benefit from that. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Muller, 52 Guyon. I'm absolutely opposed to the leaf blower ban. I'm an organic gardener myself, and I don't use chemicals or anything like that. I spend a lot of time in my yard. I love being in my yard. My concern is someone like my friend Tony Sanchez. Tony and I have been friends for 25 years. He's not going to speak because he's uncomfortable, and he doesn't live in Pleasantville. But I want you to see him, and I want you to understand what he's up against, because he is going to have a real hard time if this goes into effect, especially when I hear the other speakers saying, well, we should do it all year round. It used to be that he could do 10 lawns with a leaf blower, with leaf blowers, and he could make money, he could employ 5 people. These are people that don't have a lot of money. With the equipment has not caught up yet to be effective enough to do this. So what I'm asking you to do is to put this off until the technology comes up and it can compete with the gas blower as far as power and ability. I think that sometimes we stay in silos and we only talk to people who agree with us, but I asked Tony to come here for this very reason. We have a lot of people in town that put lawn signs up and talk about love is love and all these other things. He's got to feed his family. And he and I had a long conversation. Like I said, 25 years we've been friends. And I'm worried about him, and I'm worried about the other people that may not be able to make money enough to feed their family because they're not going to be able to do what they do right now. It's a real concern for me. And like I said, the technology eventually will catch up. And when it does catch up and it is effective, you can do it. But in the meantime, I don't think we should be checking a box. We should be thinking about the people that are actually doing this. Take, for example, if you had a cleaning service. And in the cleaning service 20 years ago, you said, sorry, you can't use these chemicals. Maybe the family wouldn't have done as well. I don't know. So I want to give Tony and all the other people that do this work. I cut my own grass, so I don't pay someone to do it. But I want to make sure these guys are okay too. Thank you.
So John, I got to ask a question that you're kind of a spokesperson for the folks who actually do this work. And you know, one point that's been raised by some folks who have talked to me on both sides of the issue is the question of whether you really need a gas blower to be blowing off the porch, blowing off the walk, blowing off the driveway. You know, really kind of unrelated to the grass itself. And I mean, I certainly have observed in my neighborhoods quite a bit of time spent, you know, blowing off the porch furniture and all that kind of stuff. It seems like that kind of stuff could be pretty easily achieved with an electric blower. It's a lighter goal and all of that. Do you have a thought on that?
I do. I think it's possible. My concern is, because we're hearing the other speakers like, no, we're not going to stop here. We're going to ban it completely. And they have banned it.
That isn't what we said.
But it could be. It could happen. You could put it up next year. And in Scarsdale and in Irvington, they have done that. And these guys can't make their money when it's completely banned. They can't make their money. You can't. You have 5 guys doing a lawn and they have to rake. It takes a whole day compared to if they had the leaf blowers. It's just, I don't want Pleasantville to be so elitist that we're not thinking about the people that are actually cleaning houses and doing lawns. That's all.
I hear what you're saying, John, but I think part of that comes from what we as homeowners are asking our landscapers to do, right? If our expectation is that every little blade of grass has to be blown off the lawn and every little speck has to be disappeared, then that makes that aspect of it more demanding. But I think that it has to come also as a cultural shift from us. Just a couple of points as well. As you said, you know, similar law, you know, a couple of communities have gone further. Just so that you know, a lot of communities around us have passed some kind of leaf blower restriction. So this includes Ardsley, Bedford, Buchanan, Croton-on-Hudson, Dobbs Ferry, Hastings, Irvington, Larchmont, Mamaroneck, New Rochelle, Pelham, Rye, Scarsdale, Sleepy Hollow, which has had a similar restriction since 2013. Terrytown, Ossining, Tuckahoe, White Plains, Newcastle, Yonkers, Mount Vernon, and Mount Kisco. And, you know, somewhere down the line, most likely the state is going to pass some kind of regulation, right? So I completely sympathize with the difficulty of making the transition, and I've started to see a little bit what is required by working with our Parks Department, because they have to work with, you know, professional grade equipment, which is different from what you and I use in our own yards.
Maybe not.
Well, I don't know what kind of grade equipment you use, but And it is a transitional process. And as Peter said, in the summer months, hopefully landscapers will not be required to do as much use of the leaf blower. And so it won't be as heavy of a lift for them. Part of that comes from us, right? Part of that comes from what are we demanding of them. And then one additional piece that I won't speak to at length, maybe somebody else can speak to, but there is also a significant health cost for the people who use these leaf blowers. Without going into the details, the kind of air pollution that comes out of these leaf blowers is much more significant than, for example, what comes out of cars. And so people who are working with these on a daily basis, the hearing loss that they can incur, and also the significant health damage. So I think that there are a number of things to consider in terms of the impact on the landscapers who work in our community. But I completely agree with you that we need to take the impact that it has on them into consideration.
Well, two things. I mean, I appreciate your concern, but again, this is how he feeds his family. We have to be mindful of that. This is how he feeds his family.
Absolutely.
Okay? And, that's what I want you to think about.
Absolutely. And I think that there will continue to be a demand within this community. But the point
I'm
is
sure
well
there
taken.
will be. And like I said,
Yeah.
at some point, the technology will catch up and it'll be a moot point. But I don't want to have him and his family and the other guys here suffer because we're not there yet. It's the same thing. People can, tool around town in a Tesla. Not everyone can afford a Tesla. Some of us still have to buy gas cars. So it's this kind of thing that I just want you this should be part of the discussion. I don't know if you spoke to any landscapers like my friend Tony and consulted with them. I don't know if they said it was okay and it was going to be great or what, but just want you to think about there's a human side here where this is how he feeds his family. This is how he's been feeding his family his entire life. And he's my friend, and I'm here to speak for him and just give my opinion as a Pleasantville resident. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Don Williman, and I live at 170 Mountain Road. And I appreciate having this hearing and hearing both sides. And I can understand, well, some of the people in the industry who possibly could be hurt. I mean, that's, like you mentioned before, there's the pros and cons. But I look at it this way. Industry is always in a perpetual chase of adopting new technologies. And the people who stay with the old technologies, they get hurt if they don't change. Sometimes there's economic cost to the people, could be the residents of the village. If the competition of the landscapers has to abide by the same law, and if they're honest, or if the enforcement, or whatever the mechanism is, they all have to rake or just leave the leaves, they're on an equal footing with the other people, with their competition. So, I understand transition is difficult. No one likes transition, especially in industry when it's a bread and butter issue. But the bottom line is, they're on an equal footing with their competition. How many years ago we didn't have these leaf blowers? People did other means. Either the owners couldn't afford the raking, or if they did, their neighbors weren't aggravated by the noise and the pollution. The other thing, I'll just cut it brief because everyone's touched on most of the issues I have in mind, but just think of it in these terms. We have zoning rules to keep residential areas as far as reasonably possible far away from industrial areas. What's the reason for that? Noise, pollution, maybe other effects. And most towns strive to have that in their ordinances to keep the residential areas quiet, restful, peaceful, and a desirable place to live. What we've done here by having some people in the community, and it seems to be a growing number, who want to see not a darn leaf anywhere, we've taken an industrial technology and brought it home to our neighborhood. And I oppose that. I think it should never be done. I mean, you look at the property size that we have in Pleasantville. Most of the land that we have is rather small. And I don't buy when I see the number of people who are using the blowers, personally, I think they could rake it in about the same time. I personally raked all through my childhood on Long Island. We had Norway maples all over. We had heaps and heaps of them. I would rake it in the same time I see some of these people using blowers. I don't buy that argument. I understand there's a profit and probably a better profit if you use the machines. I understand that. But there's a transition here we all need to look at. And I oppose the application of industrial technologies in my quiet residential area. And I think that's the mindset that we need to take a look at. It's a residential area. Let's keep it that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Hello, Nancy Cande, Summit Place, Pleasantville. Thank you. I want to thank you sincerely for a very reasonable proposal. You're not banning the use of the blowers. You're just asking that they be electric, correct?
So you can use, as it's proposed, you can use a gas or electric blower up until May 15 or after October 1. Between May 15 and October 1, you can use a blower as long as it's electric, but not gas.
So I think that's very reasonable that the blowers are allowed, but except for the months in which it's extreme, that it needs to be electric. I'm way old enough to know, growing up, we did not have leaf blowers. Nobody suffered. We had to rake the leaves. Sometimes we
So
got...
I don't mean to interrupt, just be clear. The leaf season allows any kind of blower as currently proposed.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying by it being reasonable. You're not
Right.
completely banning it. Growing up, we didn't have them at all, and we seem to survive. I think another issue is people is afraid of change. I remember the fear when we were banning the plastic bags that we wouldn't survive that. And now it's not even an issue. In fact, it's better because the bags I bring are better than the ones that we used to be given. Part of the problem with the noise is I'm a retired educator, but I still support the city schools. And I can't predict when these leaf blowers are gonna go like on steroids. And so to plan a call with a school or a presentation, I don't know whether I'm gonna be interrupted. And there are times I had to get off the phone because I couldn't hear it. It was coming from both ends. It was complete, and it went on for a very long time. I have a neighbor, like you were mentioning, who at the image of a leaf gets his leaf blower out. It's become out of control. Also, it is better for the gardens to not use leaf blowers. It is better that it stays there. I have no idea why people want to do that to their lawns, use a leaf blower. The organic matter and the living things are harmed from this. I do all my own yard work. Nobody does it for me. And I cannot say it takes a long time. So I really hope that we can come to a consensus that it has really become a little out of control with the noise and the inconsiderateness. 9:01, leaf blowers start going when they're allowed to. And if people are really concerned, then maybe people can share electric leaf blowers so people aren't not able to blow leaves if they only have a gas one. But I don't think that's a fair argument because a lot of people economically are hurting now. And I don't think that not having leaf blowers is going to change the economy. So thank you. I think it's really fair. I think it satisfies both parties, which means everybody and nobody's happy, and that's usually a very good way to go.
Clearly, nobody's happy.
The story of our lives.
Thank you.
Do we have a first-time caller, long-time listener?
Other speakers?
Yeah.
Welcome.
There's somebody who knows if we could speak to the equipment, but he's probably only going to be there till 9 if they're interested.
Is that JT?
Good evening. Artie Carlucci, 20 Roselle Avenue in Pleasantville. I'm in favor of the ordinance. I think it's as fair as previous speaker said, nobody's totally happy, so there's a lot of fairness to it. But I'm looking back. I was a teacher. I just retired. I taught for 40 years, and most recently environmental science. And one of the things my students learned about was the basis of environmental laws. Now, this is not earth-shattering. It's not Clean Water Act or anything like that. But the whole idea is that environmental law is based on the idea you can use your property to your benefit, but not to injure another. Okay? So the whole idea is based on actually from Roman law and King John's law from the Magna Carta, but it shot into the Bill of Rights, and basically it's what brought about some of the environmental laws of the past. It's really about risk. And, what's happening with leaf blowers, there is risk. There's a lot of health impacts and environmental impacts. As far as health, I think what we all think of, I think, when you think of leaf blowers is the noise. It's anywhere from 95 to 115 decibels, which is louder than the subway in New York City. What I'm doing right now is probably about 60 decibels, so significantly louder. Hearing loss is cumulative. From the day you're born, your hearing starts to go downhill. And when you're exposed to high levels of noise like that, it has a debilitating effect. In addition, generally leaf blowers have very low frequency sound, which travels farther. So when a leaf blower is, my house is over 100 years old. I have concrete walls, but you can kind of feel it through the wall. I do my own lawn. I have a rake. I use it. I have a 1/4 acre, and it takes me about 2.5 hours by myself. My son says, "Good job, Dad." But so in terms of that, and also it increases stress, which I think we're seeing a little bit tonight, and stress hormones. It increases anxiety. It elevates blood pressure. It compromises the immune system. There are a lot of debilitating effects of the sound. Now, it's just the sound. In terms of the pollution itself, yes, a leaf blower and a 2-cycle engine can, in 1 hour, can emit as much emissions. By the way, I got this from How Stuff Works, this particular statistic. As much as a Toyota Camry driving 1,000 miles. So it's a significant amount of carbon and greenhouse gases, but also it gives VOCs. It has smog-producing elements. It produces carbon monoxide, and that can cause asthma, and enhance, I don't know if that's the right word, but it enhances COPD. It can affect cardiovascular disease, and it can also emit endocrine disruptors and neurotoxins. So you have that element. What this is really is a tragedy to the commons, and I don't get out much, but some of the speakers tonight and some of the points that they've made. First of all, it is a transition, and I feel for people who are taking a hit because of this. I'm thinking they're taking a hit right now because in January gas was $3 a gallon, and now it's gone for $4.50. And I have a funny feeling that now I don't have a landscaper, but on the landscaping bill, you're either having to take a hit or else passing it on to the people they're working for. But it's a tragedy to the commons because when half my block, I live on Roselle. There's myself and 3 other people. We do our own lawns, and 2 of us I have an electric mower and someone else does. I don't have a leaf blower, but everybody else has landscapers, and there's the rub. And I realize that it's a for-profit business, obviously, and you're looking to do that, and you have families to feed and stuff. We all do, and I don't consider Pleasantville elitist. I've been here over 25 years, and there were mailmen and custodians and people lived in town. Well, that's changing a little bit, but I like to think that we're still a village. And the thing is, what you've done as far as the ordinance is this. It's a negotiation. And my heart of hearts, I think that when you leaf blow, you're blowing all the soil away. The soil is the wealth beneath your feet. Okay, and people, Burgers makes a lot of money, and so does, I guess, Home Depot, with fertilizer and all that other stuff to make the soil better. But the thing is, if you're making it better, if you just let the stuff lay there, it would get better. Okay, yet I rake. Okay, but other people leaf blow totally gets rid of the humus layer, and it does a hit on topsoil, so you wind up adding more, and it's leading to more erosion. Okay, but I'm hoping this ordinance moves forward. At least, it's a step. And you're going to have to adapt. At one point in time, it was all horses around here, and then somebody built a car, and now look at us. Well, now we have leaf blowers over rakes. Well, maybe this will happen. And the thing is, there are some sound arguments in terms of economics to this. And there are going to have to be adjustments to this transition. But why would you negotiate the health of your children, the health of your family, or the health of your neighbors, because it's a little bit more, because the people aren't in this thing. We're talking about the landscapers, we're talking about people who do their own, but there are some people who have the landscapers work for them. So, they're making choices. But as I say, I'm in favor of the ordinance, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Andrea Smith Yaya. I live at 41 Skytop Drive. And I don't have points that are different to add, but I just wanted to be one more voice, in support of this ban. To me, it seems like a real compromise. I'd like to see a ban of all leaf blowers. I'd like to see it go, for longer in the year. So, I think that what you're proposing or what we're considering is reasonable. Then, again, it's going to be a compromise for everyone. I do my own lawn. It doesn't take me that long. I've got less than a quarter of an acre, but I do my own lawn with a rake. I've done it all my life with a rake. I wish that we could have, maybe a change in mindset. Some understanding that these green, pristine lawns really are like really dead zones in terms of biodiversity, that we're destroying the insect life, and that in turn is destroying the bird life. So that really these green, pristine lawns they're really not beautiful at all. And I guess that's all I wanted to say. But thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Hey.
Mark DeFabio, 85 Woodland Road, Pleasantville, New York. Been a long-time resident, over 34 years. I run a business, Lawn Green. I work in the town. We do a lot of good things for the town. I commend a lot of the people here that do their own lawns. But what about the people that choose not to do their own lawns? It's one of the biggest investments that a person can make is their property and a home. And if they choose to keep it a certain way, who are we to say that they shouldn't keep it a certain way? It's their biggest investment. A good landscape and a well-maintained property is worth 15% of the property value. You can't maintain a property with rakes. There's no way that you can clean a property in the same amount of time as with power equipment. The electric equipment that you buy in Home Depot or even in the mower stores now are not adequate. They last about 20 minutes on battery charge. So you'd have to constantly charge them or have tons of batteries. When they break, you could throw them in the garbage because there's nobody to fix them. So it's a constant, uphill battle with electric equipment as far as a commercial grade. Commercial grade mowers, I go to landscape conferences. they're tens of thousands of dollars, true commercial grade mowers. One thing I heard people say is that they cut their own grass. A lawnmower, a lot of lawnmowers are two cycle also. They use a mix.
Could I just interrupt briefly? Just don't want people to get the wrong idea. Nothing in this law says anything about lawnmowers.
No, I know
It's
that.
only about blowers, but I just also want to interject that the village recently bought, at high expense, as you report, a commercial riding electric mower. So I just didn't want people who hear only a piece of this to think we're trying to limit the use of lawn mowers. We're not.
But where does it end? Scarsdale, you can't use a blower in the spring cleanups either. I walked away from accounts. Who's going to pay for the additional labor? Labor is the biggest part of a landscape company's cost. That's the biggest expense. If you're going to rake lawns, I personally just wouldn't even do it. Walk away from the accounts. You're going to hurt the homeowners in the long run. Homeowners are going to pay a lot more money for having their properties cleaned. And like I said, in Scarsdale, I walked away from accounts because it's not worth it at some point. What we charge to do a house now compared to 50 years ago, it's not that big of a difference. And the only way that it's that low is because of technology. So the electric technology is not there. There's also hazards with the electric technology also. What do you do with the batteries? The batteries are super toxic. Where do they go? Landfills? Where do they mine for the things that go into the toxic batteries? China? So, electric equipment isn't foolproof. And a lot of people here, I see, that they do their own lawns, they rake their own properties. Like I said, a lot of people choose not to, but also, I really don't know where to go.
So could I ask you a question? You're well equipped to help this issue. I mean, what we're dealing with here is sort of the classic question of, here are the five of us sitting here, we have zero interest as a group in harming people's right to do what they want on their own property. We have zero interest in harming your business, but we have a lot of interest in navigating the circumstances of when the rights of your business and the rights of a homeowner start to intrude upon the rights of others. And so here we are in a circumstance where we've gotten lots of feedback, both pro and con, as we've heard tonight, but a whole lot of people feel as though their neighborhoods are literally invaded. And I can tell you, I mean, on my street, there have been moments when a neighbor has had a landscape firm with as many as 4 backpack blowers going all at once, and it's absolutely deafening.
I would say that that's a problem.
All right. So, but again, so the question really here is not, are we trying to kill you or harm you? Are we trying to raise prices for anyone? No, we're trying to navigate a circumstance when people's rights conflict, and it's not fair not to try to navigate that.
Right. There's no way that my company, we ever have 4 backpacks going in the off season. The only time that happens is when you're doing leaf cleanups.
Which we're not regulating here.
Exactly.
Right.
So 1 backpack off the back of the truck, even if we're doing a bunch of houses, 1 person is going with a backpack behind the guys with the grass. So, how are you going to regulate some of these companies that come into town that don't have signs on their trucks, that aren't registered businesses? You can't ticket them. You can't stop them. You're going to hurt real companies that do a lot of good for the community. And, I've been a citizen here for, 34 years.
Have you thought at all about ways to maybe scale things down? I happen to live across the street from several properties that are managed by your company. Mm-hmm. And
we limit the use of backpack
It is often
blowers.
like 4 guys at a time.
No.
And sometimes also the once you guys came in with a, what do you call that?
A
like
ride-on blower?
self-defense thing that was called a hurricane.
Right. That was during cleanups.
Yeah, but I've just wondered, like, particularly in the summer months, given that, well, as you say, the leaf cleanup doesn't have to take place then. Have you thought about ways in which perhaps the use of leaf blowers could be scaled down?
We limit it. I tell my crews, blow only where you have to, because you're going to get heat from neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
I live in town. I'm around town all the time. I don't really need that hassle. So my guys know we just blow the walk, blow a little bit, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is, the homeowner, he's paying for a service. He wants the service. And like I said, the electric blows.
In the non-leaf season, when you're blowing grass clippings off a sidewalk, isn't that something a lighter duty device can do a good job of?
Okay. In the heavy growing season, which is kind of May, beginning of June, the grass is growing at an extremely strong rate. So when you're cutting the grass, you can't even use bags on the mower. You can't use bags on the mower because you have no place to dump grass clippings anyway. So you have to let the grass fly. When you let the grass fly and it's wet and damp, you're getting clumps all over the lawn. So homeowners don't want that on their lawn, walking on the property.
You said there's no place to dump grass clippings. You mean there isn't a repository?
The dumps
for it?
do not want grass clippings anymore.
So what do you do with the clippings you blow? Where do they end up?
Yeah.
They disperse into the grass.
Yeah.
Because grass is 90% water.
Right.
And it deteriorates into the soil.
So in essence.
And it also adds fertilizer to the soil.
And how would that be different? Again, I'm just asking the question. If you used mulching mowers, do you use mulching mowers? In the strong growing season, when the grass is growing a lot, the clumps get ridiculous. We've tried using mulching mowers, commercial mulching mowers. Doesn't work. So is that like a few
Not
weeks?
when you go cut the grass once a week.
Yeah. Is that problem just a few weeks and then into the summer it's not a problem? Or?
In the summer, you could get away with it. Okay, but May, early June, the grass is growing a lot. And a lot of times you go to a house and it's damp in the morning. I've over 34 years of experience.
Sorry to take up your time, and it's just that you have this professional background. We've got this spreadsheet of the regulations that have existed in other towns. So there are 45 municipalities in Westchester, and by the latest accounting, 25 of 45, a majority of them have a leaf blower regulation of some kind. How do your colleagues deal with that? I mean, you said you've given up accounts in Scarsdale because they banned them completely.
Not completely. You're allowed to use them in the fall.
Most of them have various different flavors, but there's a whole lot of experience.
We leave the properties more messy. And the prices go up too. So the homeowner is going to bear the brunt of it. Okay, so who's paying a lot of taxes. Another thing I'd like to mention also, I heard a lot of people that are for the blower ban are happy about the compromise, but I've also heard many of them say that it hasn't gone far enough. So, unless I'm hearing something wrong, so they're...
Look, Mark, there are plenty of people all across the spectrum. There are people that will ask for more on any subject or less on any subject tomorrow. If you're making the point that any step is the beginning of a slippery slope to a full ban, could that be? It's imaginable. That isn't the idea any of us sitting here have.
And then where does it end? Blowers, mowers?
Well, there's another.
No mow in May.
There's another way to look at it too, which is that this isn't just about Pleasantville, right? This is happening on a larger scale.
But doesn't mean it's right.
The state of California has, has banned gas-powered equipment for starting a couple of years from now across the entire state.
Sure.
There are similar laws being proposed in New York State.
Doesn't mean electric's better.
So in one way to think about it is this is the transition that we're all involved in, whether we want to be or not, on some level, which is one of the reasons that, I was involved in the rebate program. I wish we had enough money to offer a rebate program for landscapers.
We do have electric blowers also.
So I'm sure that you're thinking about this, right? And you're thinking about the fact that this is something that you're going to have to be working towards, right? And obviously, it's not something that can be done easily overnight. I've been working with the Parks Department as well, and I understand that money-wise, investment-wise, and also in terms of the equipment and learning to use the equipment is something that has to be done gradually, right? But we can all see the writing on the wall. Like, we can all see whether we're in favor of it or not in favor of it, that it's trending in that direction. And so this is a compromise, but it's also, I feel like, an opportunity to take a first step in that transition, right?
As a board, do you know, like, what percentage of people in town are against blowers and what percentage are in favor?
Well, I mean, yes, we've conducted surveys and we've taken a lot. We've had a lot of input.
To be clear, the results of those surveys tilted modestly against a ban.
Well, it was more complicated
so
than
it was
that.
against the ban?
So people were in favor of transitioning from gas to electric, for instance. A majority was in favor of.
It also depends how you word that also.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, I would say it's hard to kind of split the atom, as it were, because it really depends on what you're asking of people.
Exactly. It's the way the question's asked.
But I mean, further to what I said before is what's absolutely clear, and it's clear in the record, it's clear in all the emails, it's clear in the discussion we've had over a long period of time about this, that there are lots of people who are upset about the impact on their lives of other people's leaf blowers. And so that isn't purely a, are there 20 in favor, 19 against, or vice versa? There is enough concern about it for a variety of reasons that we need to address it in some way.
I understand, sure.
Right?
But where does that balance go to blower ban or not blower ban?
Well, so the balance that we have crafted is what you see in this proposal, which is to say you can use an electric blower anytime you want. You can use a gas blower, except you can't. The only time you can't use a gas blower is May 15 to October 1. And again, as Tom Rooney suggested, he'd rather see those dates changed. But
I'm with him. I commend him for doing his own work.
That was the concept, and that was the attempt, as I think you're hearing from all of us, to say, everybody's a little bit right. There's no doubt about it.
I think a compromise would be lessening that window. Right now, I think it's,
But when you say that the spring cleanup, I mean, my experience, like, I'm behind you guys generally in my spring cleanup. But you guys are done by the end of March, I would say.
Spring cleanup, but then, like I was saying, when the grass is growing a lot, and you're cutting grass and it's just coming out the side of the machine, there's clumps everywhere. People have their kids, they go walking on the grass, bring grass clippings in the house. When you disperse it, also when you get clumps of grass on lawn, it kills the grass. Kills the grass in those areas where you just leave them. And you can't have guys going around raking and grooming. It's,
look,
paying guys a lot of money per hour.
Choose there. You wouldn't be saying what you just said 25 years ago because you wouldn't be used to using blowers 25 years ago, right? True.
But also,
right.
What you were charging a customer 25 years ago wasn't much far away from what you're charging now.
I totally get that.
Right.
You've created some economics advantages here that have benefited presumably you, but also the homeowner.
So it's going to go.
Everybody benefits economically.
It's going to go in the other direction. Then.
Okay, but you've benefited economically at the price of impact on folks who are upset about it.
Right.
And it
but there's half the people that aren't upset by it.
Okay, but when here we are in a place called Pleasantville, right? If you are behaving in a manner, I don't mean you personally, but if some group of people are behaving in a manner that is really a problem for their neighbors, it seems reasonable to say, hold it. I don't want to be causing problems for my neighbors. Can I modify my behavior?
Believe me, I'm not even fighting for myself.
Right.
I'm fighting for the homeowners. Okay. There's her chuckles, but
okay.
Whatever.
But I mean, you're not fighting for the homeowner who's upset by it.
Depends on the homeowner, right?
You're
right. I'm fighting for
I totally get it, and I respect it.
And
everything you've said about you and your business, I understand. You've been here a long time and been a contributor to all kinds of things.
I think I'm here long enough.
Yeah.
I have a question. What are your thoughts on now, with the effect that the pandemic had? A lot of people are now in the workforce and are running businesses, careers from their homes. and they depend on that. There's
Mhm.
people who are either, having huge meetings that they depend on. They never really noticed, they never really cared. But now their livelihood is also on the line when, if they're working from home, that's the way it is. What are your thoughts on that?
In turn, I could say our livelihood depends on what you're legislating.
Right. Whose livelihood is more at stake?
You tell me.
That's the hard part. That's the hardest
I'm the
part of
working
all.
man.
That's the hardest part of
Yeah.
all of this is that I can argue the same.
Neither one.
I'm just giving you a devil's advocate on that.
Both sides have their rights.
Right. And that's the hardest part of all this.
And I
is
think
that-
it should be more of a compromise. I think.
I agree.
I'm okay with, in the summer months, no gas power blowers. I think it should be extended a little bit more. I think that would be
I
a true
agree.
compromise. And not just go along with what every other town does. Because Pleasantville is different than every other town.
That's what we're trying.
All right.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Other people in the room, or should we go to folks who may be on the Zoom call?
Hi,
Oh,
Kim
yeah.
Bendis,
Hey, Kim.
86 West Gore Avenue. Hi. And I've just been trying to listen to all this. I didn't actually have plans to speak here, but, I'm not in favor of a ban. I do feel like we need a better compromise. I hear the arguments that people are making, very salient points on both sides of this. I've been a resident 18 years, and we used to do our own lawn. My husband got Lyme disease because we're spending 2 hours outside, in the yard, working on our yard, working on our property, raking it, doing all of that kind of thing. My husband works long hours. I have 5 kids. I'm home with them. He doesn't want to spend hours doing yard work on the only time he has to spend with his family. So we've gone through various companies. Now Mark spends 10 minutes once a week, and my yard work is taken care of. 10 minutes. His people are on my property, in and out. And I have a yard that I'm proud of. I don't have clumps of grass and dirt and leaves being tracked in and out of my house by the 20 neighborhood kids that are always over there. I have a yard that looks presentable so I can entertain my neighbors, my friends. I don't want to spend my time, and I don't need every blade of grass. I think that was really kind of belittling comments personally, but I don't need every leaf, every this, every that. But I like for them to come in, blow it off, make it look presentable, make it look nice, make it usable. That stuff's not getting tracked into my house. Leaf blowers are not illegal. They're not regulated. I have a right as a homeowner to maintain my property as long as I'm being considerate of my neighbors. Everyone on my street, he comes in, he does 6-8 houses on our street. He's not there an hour. And all of those yards are all maintained, and it's predictable. I know he comes every Monday morning. So I'm concerned that we're making policies and laws based on pandemic experiences when everybody's home, yet more and more employers are requiring people to get back to the office. Children are in schools full time. Fewer people are working from home now than they were 2 years ago, a year ago. I feel like we're rushing into this, and we have a history of doing so in Pleasantville. I mean, there's been so much development all over, and we haven't lived with the consequences of that. I can't even get through town because of the traffic. I think we need to slow down. We need to think about this a little bit more. I know there have been a lot of discussions and conversations over the last year or so, but I don't think we're there yet to the point where we can make a law in Pleasantville. I think we need to, John's point, let technology catch up a bit. I think we need a shorter window to start with. I don't think you go from 0 to 60 on things. I don't think that's fair to people. We have rights to maintain our property. We're not doing anything illegal or improper. I do think there are areas where we can be more considerate neighbors and we can all work together better. But I just feel like this is all moving very quickly, and we want to just go from here to here.
So could I, just to touch on that one point, and I hear you. The discussion about leaf blowers has been going on for
couple years.
At least 5 years.
13.
How long?
13.
13.
Well, 13 in public.
So I've been on this board a long time, as you guys likely know.
Yeah.
And it has been discussed many, many times over a long period of time, and the discussion that's given rise to the current proposal has been going on, 3 years? I think it predated the pandemic. Certainly, the pandemic with all these people at home, kids at home, whatever, has
That certainly brought it to the forefront.
well, and it has taken a lot of people. We've already heard from other speakers. Whatever, you go off to work, you're not there, you don't hear it, whatever. So, I guess what I would say, and I think so far in conversations I've had with people who are opposed to this, is that if the amount of noise that these teams of landscapers with gas-powered blowers create today, if that happened 30 years ago, the lights, the phones at Village Hall would be ringing off the hook because it would have felt just so completely over the top. But over time, I get it. The world changes. I'm not saying that we shouldn't change along with it, but there's been this creep to arrive at the circumstance where in some neighborhoods, in the view of some people, a lot of them, but whether it's majority or not, I can't say, there are moments when they are deprived of the quiet use of their own property. I mean,
I couldn't get off my own street because of trucks
Okay.
and things, and not from leaf blower companies.
so- but I
mean,
don't have a lot of-
construction is allowed to start at 7 a.m. on a Saturday, and virtually every house in my neighborhood's gone through construction.
And
I've been
I don't have a
subjected
lot
to
of
that
power to
for years.
I mean,
It's
again,
not
same story.
actually, by the way. So
We're trying not
Well, you
to.
should let your contractors
9 a.m.
We're trying not to let your neighbors to get in the way of your neighbors doing what they want to renovate their homes. I think most of you who know me would say it's a fair statement that I'm not a guy out there trying to hem in your personal rights up to the point at which they conflict with other people's rights, and that's where we are here now. So, I mean, you say 10 minutes on your property. I have no doubt that that's true. 10 minutes on 5 or 6 lots, there's an hour of quite a din. Maybe with what goes on with Mark's team on Westgora is relatively quiet. I can tell you what goes on sometimes on my street is, I'm not speaking for myself, but just observing it. I came out of my house this morning and it was like, whoa, what's that? And I went to find out it was 4 houses away, but really quite loud at my own house. So again, we're trying to balance the change of the world, the change of people's expectations, the change in the kinds of equipment that people want, the change in expectations about what people's lawns, yards, homes, porches, whatever should look like. But find a way to do that in a manner that's as respectful as it can be to as many people as possible. And what's going on right now, by very clear reports, does not feel respectful to a lot of people. And so if we can find a way to help with that, it feels like that's what we're here to do. All
But I
of
can
us,
appreciate
not just
that.
us,
Of
but
course
all
I
of
can.
us.
As I said, I
Right.
think we all need to work harder to be better neighbors to each other,
Right.
be more respectful in that
Right.
sense. But to legislate it right now, from May 15th to, I just feel like that is starting here instead of starting here. Where does it end? I don't know.
But one thing to keep in mind perhaps is that leaf blowers actually aren't required as much during that period, right? I mean, they're called leaf blowers for a reason.
Well, the
the
spring
heavy
cleanups
lifting
in the
takes
fall, I
place
know
in the fall and
you
in the spring, right? So that's the sense in which it feels like a
Except for
compromise.
that this is like the heavy grass growing season where my grass, he mows on a Monday morning. And by Friday, I'm like, is it Monday yet? Because I can't walk through my yard. So I think that even going definitely to Memorial Day, letting that higher growth season, letting them use the equipment that they need to use, or homeowners. There's several homeowners on my street who don't use services. They use their own personal equipment, but they happen to be gas blowers through 3 homes. I'm just concerned again that we're going from carte blanche to here's a whole bunch of laws in place because some people are upset. I don't know that we've tried alternatives, and I'm not sure that this is a time to be just legislating it at this point. If we're taking cues from the state, where is the state moving? You've said there's all these municipalities that have made, similar laws or whatever, but
Some of
I
them
don't
have
know.
been on the books for over a decade. So we're not
Yeah, I
exactly
know that.
pioneers in this effort.
And we were working at this for a while.
Yeah, I know that.
You
I know that.
said, I just think to the fact of what you said, and I completely understand subjectively how you're saying I can't get through my lawn, on Friday, you're like, when is it Monday yet? We get emails here from people who say that I'm just trying to sit in my house and, just enjoy TV, and I can't. I'm also trying to sit there and I have to close the windows because the smell of the smoke and the gas is coming into my house.
And I appreciate that, yeah.
So, again, where's the difference? Your subjective feel if I want to get my grass cut to the person who can't just sit in their own living room and enjoy TV.
Again, I feel like we need to work towards being more considerate of each other. Maybe it's the amount of blowers that are going at a time. I don't know. I don't know the answers to that.
Right,
but I don't know about banning them outright for this amount of time. I don't think that that's necessarily the solution either.
Well, a part of what us as your elected officials, as part of what we do is we do that work for you. We look into everything. We've done studies on what all the other towns around us have done, how they came to these decisions. We ourselves have also read so many different articles on the pros and cons. So going into this, we're not just going as starting from carte blanche to nothing. We actually have been thinking about how we can do this. How can it affect people the least if we end up doing a ban? And looking at it, the summer seems to be the easiest one because also there are a lot of kids that are out of school. Kids are out and about by their homes. They're not going to be in school anymore. So there's more of this. And
Summer's not May 15th though.
It hasn't been, but it has not been touched up a lot on how it's affected the environment and the pollution that it does bring. I can tell you myself, my family owns a cleaning company and they also do landscaping. So this isn't something that I'm not aware of how it's going to affect us. I am, but I also have to think, I can't take the self-interest in me and just think about it, hey, this is going to affect all the working man. This is going to take food off someone's table. I also have to think about every other person. There's emails that we get of people who say, you know what, I have children that are young, that are babies, and these machines are coming so
I know
loud.
that. I get that.
Right. And
then there's hammering and jackhammers and lawn trucks and this and that, and they're waking up my babies that I spent 3 hours putting sleep. I get that.
So
you're preaching to the choir there.
Exactly, but where we draw the line of how we do these things is we have to start somewhere and try to figure out somewhere, because it would be so much easier, I can tell you that. My wife would love to have me home right now and not be talking about leaf blowers for 10 years. But we are, because of the fact that we have constituents that we have to respond to. And if we sit there and do nothing, then we're not doing our job. So part of that is, in life, so many different things have come up that we have to, as your elected officials, that we have to look into. It's not an easy, I don't want to take anyone's rights away. And so I completely appreciate where you're coming from. And I get you. I totally get you. But I also want you to think about the other people that maybe aren't voicing those things that we get multiple emails about. So it's about a compromise, but it's not, we started from nowhere and we're going here. There's been a lot put
we
into
are,
this.
because right now there's no ban, and now you're enacting or want to a ban.
But it's not a full ban.
On gas-powered leaf blowers, not
No,
on
I
all leaf
understand
blowers.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I read
I mean, we're doing something. So in that sense,
I know, but like what I've
if the
seen in
alternative was to
town
do
is
nothing.
that you do something and you don't live with the consequences of it, and then you keep doing things and you keep doing things. There's so much development and there's so much impact to this town. You've changed.
Yeah, let me talk for a second. Sorry, can I for a second?
I'm just concerned that we're in that same pattern again, where we're just going to take something and do it.
First of all, this is not what we're here to talk about. Second of all, I feel like we're a little loose with our facts. There was a census that was just done less than 2 years ago. In the last 50 years, Pleasantville has grown by less than 6% total. That is far less than the U.S. It's less than many surrounding towns. Pleasantville actually hasn't grown that much. Out of all the development that's taken place, most of this is the result of laws that were in place 15 years ago. And the only thing that the board did that would allow extra people is allow one extra story in that building, which is less than 1%.
Oh.
So, yes, if you want to talk about the forces of economics and how they conspire over time to make some villages more successful in attracting successful businesses, having successful, like the Jacob Burns Theater, having that accumulate with restaurants and then bringing people in to go to them, and then more people wanting to live here, sure. But any of these developments could have happened at any other time, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about that in the future.
That's all off topic. I mean,
No, but you mentioned the out of control growth, so I want to correct the
pattern of behavior
record.
that I'm concerned is happening again. I don't want to see something happen and be a law in place, because laws never get repealed. They get built upon. And I think we need to start somewhere. I agree with that. Again, I agree we all need to work together to be better neighbors to each other, to be more considerate of each other, not to infringe on each other's rights. Those are basic things, especially in a village like this where we all know each other. We all work together. Kids go to school together. We coach each other's teams. But I am concerned that we need to start a bit smaller and see how that goes. See what the problems are, see what actually arises from practical experience, not from, I don't know. I just think that what's being proposed is an aggressive starting point, and I would like you to consider maybe some of the things that were said earlier, maybe a shorter window, looking at other things like that, because it sounds to me through everyone's comments that you've made up your mind and this is more of a formality, and I'm concerned about that.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Just to that point, we've been through this process and produced what seems like a compromise. We're not sitting here to say, we're going to whitewash this public hearing and not hear anyone. We're not voting on this tonight. We're here to hear what you have to say. So, two things to be said. Yes, as Paul already said, I think with great clarity, we got here through a long and rather intense and kind of demanding process. Definitely not a half-baked solution. That doesn't mean that there isn't an opportunity for all of you to be heard as there is tonight, and that's what we get. That's what we asked for, to sit here and try to understand what all of the ranges of opinion are.
Yeah, before you start, I want to say that I do appreciate everybody's opinion. I have changed my mind about one thing during this process, and we'll discuss that later. But I think it's great that you're all willing to engage and talk about it. And the only thing that triggers me a little bit is the idea that you think that we don't care, that we're not paying attention, and that we're rushing into things. My God, some of you should work in municipal government, because nothing happens quickly. Nothing happens quickly at all. Nothing happens without hours and hours of discussion. The last time we had a meeting, we didn't have one of these, and we were here till 11. So we care, and we make mistakes, and we probably are not going to do things that you agree with. And we would love for all of you to join the various boards and committees in the village and see more of what you want happen, because that's the way that it happens. Not just by protesting, but by becoming part of the process.
Welcome, sir.
Good evening. Donald Benz from DCB Tree and Landscape. I'm also a property owner on Washington Avenue. So I've been in business since 1988, and I service multiple properties through the neighborhood, as well as not cookie cutter properties, as a lot of individuals have stated where their property are. They're smaller properties, which all properties are important. But most of the properties that I service are on the outskirts. They're not little cookie cutter properties. It does take a full crew, a long time to do the services, as well as the backpack blower is an implement that we actually use. Like Mark said, it gives a curb appeal. Whether you want curb appeal or not curb appeal, it sets the standard of how you leave the service. It makes everything clean. If you have wet clippings, a backpack blower does take care of it very efficiently. But unfortunately, there's no electric. Everybody keeps saying electric. So we're not walking around with 300 feet of extension cord and using an electric blower. It's battery operated. Mm-hmm. And a regular backpack costs $700, where that went up $60 from 3 months ago. But if you were to get a regular battery backpack as a charger, and you're going to need 3 batteries. So if you're in a truck, you have to invest into like putting a little solar panel on top of that trailer to incorporate on charging those batteries. This way 3 batteries can go around. But 3 batteries and a battery backpack and the charger is like $2,400. That's a lot of money to be like, okay, we're just gonna provide this service for our customers and be like, okay, this is just gonna cost the same. As well as I do over 200 houses in Pleasantville, and not one of my 200 houses have ever complained to me and said, we have a blower on the property, it's not usable, it's too loud, or my family's starting to breathe in chemicals or smoke or anything through the window. And think about 200 accounts. On each side of you, there's a house, right? So that means 600 people will be hearing those backpacks. Out of 34 years in business, I've never had anybody, even up to date, tell me, you know what? We hear your backpack and it's a problem. I don't get that.
So, Doug.
Yeah.
Look, I know you've been around.
No, I'm
for
just
a long
voicing
time.
my opinion.
No, I know.
I just want to finish speaking because you know what? I'm not a person to speak up at the podium.
Okay, fine.
So I'm just going to get what I want done because there's no sense
I just
wasting
want to
your
respond
time
to
or
that
anybody
one
else's time here. As well as nobody ever complains and says, okay, this is a problem. And a lot of people are not aware of this, but Westchester County on their application requires us to use the implements that are up to date. So if you have a backpack that's 10 or 12 years old, Westchester County can enforce that and take it away from the landscaper, just in case nobody knows something like that. And a backpack as a commercial landscaper lasts 2 to 3 years, and then that thing goes in the garbage. It's not usable anymore. We use it. And during the summer months, think about it. Why do we want to use these things, right? Why do we want to use these things? They cost money. Gas is at an all-time high. So do we really want to, and the oil.
Don, you're speaking to us, not to
and the oil that you're putting in, so the oil for the 2-cycle went up tremendously, as well as gas prices went up tremendously. So the least that we could use these implements is better for us. But it's an implement that really needs to be used, and considerably less during the summertime, but it needs to be used. It really does. And maybe like some people said, let's maybe shrink down the situation of the time zone of where it's not really usable. And I'm gonna say this, it shouldn't be a board decision. I respect every one of you up there tonight, but it should be like, hey, the next time we do an election, it's gonna be on the back. It's gonna be A, B, or C. It's either you want it or you don't want it, or you wanna go with the restricted hours. It shouldn't be a board restriction of, hey, this is what happens. It should be a town-wide. Because let's just say you're saying, and I emailed you guys as well about my saying I'm not for it. But let's just say you only get 100 responses, and 60 or 70 of those responses are, hey, we don't want blowers. But what happens to the other 100,000s of people around this town that really require or want that kind of service, that are paying for that service? I feel like it's a property owner's responsibility if they want the blower. Just like fertilizers. You might not want fertilizer, but Mary Jane might want fertilizer. Or Mrs. Joe Blow doesn't want the pesticides. So it's an individual that wants to do what they want for their property. And if you don't want to use the blower, then ask your landscaper or your individual person, don't use a blower. You know, don't use the blower. That's the only thing I can say. But I'm totally respectable about other people's needs. But going back to like the town or the highway department and or the golf courses, hey, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You can't be able to use it and we can not be able to use it? Nah, that's not cool. And I'm also gonna say this. I also take care of multiple houses in Newcastle as well. Newcastle passed this law last year. It's hard for me to provide this service without using a blower. But I will tell you this, I do about maybe 55 homes in Newcastle. And one irate neighbor would call up every single time my guys would use a blower at that house. But if you drive around the town of Newcastle at any given time, there's companies using blowers left, right, up and down, every street, cul-de-sac. It's not enforced. It's a law that you can't use it for the same times that you guys are proposing. But the law is not enforced. It's not enforced until you get a neighbor who says, hey, this is the law, 911, and then whatever they're calling. And it's not the building department. Are you guys gonna have like a code enforcer, blower enforcer officer? Or are you guys taking this out of, hello, Pleasantville Police Department. Hi, my neighbor's using a blower. Can you please send a cop car immediately up here? rather than watch somebody who's running a red light and or the kids that are walking up down the school district, up and down the sidewalks. There's so many things that need to be looked upon, and then the blower is not one to be frowned upon. That's the only thing I can say. I appreciate everybody's concern. I'm a professional landscaper. That's the service I provide for some people. If there wasn't a need for a professional landscaper and everybody was like, hey, I'm gonna use my own little 21-inch lawnmower, whatever it might be, then that would be the scenario. But there's a need for a landscaper, and that's why people hire us. And as a lot of people say, hey, listen, 25 years ago, there wasn't a blower, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I remember my dad putting a blower on my back, and I'm still alive and able to breathe, when I was 10 or 12 years old. And there was power equipment 50 years ago. It just didn't come out it just didn't come out yesterday or last year. That's the only thing I want to say, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hi, Helen Muir, 3 Hayes Hill Road. I'm also chair of the Conservation Advisory Council and somebody who's been looking to get a reduction in leaf blower usage for a long time. I have a whole list of points. I'm going to rattle through them and try and address any questions that came up. First and foremost, even though we live in a well-insulated home, we cannot hear when there are leaf blowers being used next door. This affects our ability to work from home, which I do, and so does my husband. People have told me their babies can't sleep through this stuff. Shift workers. A long time ago, I used to work nights and evenings. You need to sleep in the day, a leaf blower goes off, you're done. Leaf blowers all leaf blowers create dust, airborne particulates, they blow poop up, they blow chemicals up, they aggravate asthma. But fossil fuel leaf blowers also cause other problems. Particulates that are in the air, ozone in the summer because of poor combustion. So it's a public health issue, especially for the operators of the equipment. So other things, because I'm on the environmental side of the equation here, the habitat is being destroyed by leaf blowers, topsoil is removed, and so on. And I know that we keep talking about this, it's impossible to move all these leaves without the blowers, but we're not asking people to do that. What we're asking them to do is to stop using gas-powered leaf blowers in the summer months. And we have chosen dates which pretty much match all the 20-something municipalities in Westchester who have the leaf blower ordinance. So we're not out there, we are in lockstep. There are some methods of mowing, and I do not pretend to be a landscaper, but I was watching a landscaper mowing recently, and the crew was mowing with the gate open on the mower deck, which I imagine from Mark DeFabo explaining is because the grass was wet. Of course, one of the things homeowners have the advantage of is we don't always have to mow when the grass is wet, we can wait for it to dry. But the gate could be positioned so that you are mowing with the gate facing the inside of the lawn, the center of the lawn, such that any blown grass is not going onto the sidewalk, the driveway, the road. This is possible, it's just a mindset. I'm not going to ask anybody to pick up a rake. You're not going to be raking grass anyway. We're talking about grass here, not leaves. And we have a serious problem with our carbon footprint, and gas-powered small engines are a huge contributor to that. To that end, we've had a fabulous rebate program we've been running, and the Climate Smart community used much of a grant money to give rebates to homeowners who turned in gas-powered blowers and bought a new one, or turned in a gas-powered mower and bought a new one, or in fact, just bought a new electric mower or blower. And we had 31 mowers turned in and 9 gas-powered blowers, which I think is amazing. And the rebate program has been extended. The next drop-off date is Saturday, June 4th at the DPW from 9 till 3. And the rebate, just to remind people, is up to $75 for a leaf blower, $75 for a new electric mower without turning one in, or $125 if you do turn in a gas-powered mower. I do understand the concerns about batteries. They are not perfect, and they do have toxic, I don't know what to call them, heavy minerals in them. However, they are supposed to be recycled properly, and we have a place in Valhalla called the HMRF, which stands for Household Materials Recovery Facility. It's open by appointment, and they accept all rechargeable batteries. That's where they should go. Of course, hopefully those minerals are getting reused in other batteries. I don't actually know what happens to a battery downstream. What's that? No, well, actually, Mark, none of our stuff goes to landfill here in Pleasantville. It goes to an incinerator in Peekskill.
Not batteries.
Well, if you put them in your garbage, they will.
That is something that, I mean, needs to be improved for sure.
Yeah.
But there's, people are working on figuring out how to recycle lithium batteries.
Right. I am not happy with the country club exception. I think they should be able to get by, but I can understand that if you've got a pristine green to keep spotless for golfers, that's your business. That's different from a lawn or the edges of people's yards that just do not need to be like that. And I think mulching, leaving leaves in place as far as possible is the best thing to do, including grass, mulching grass in place, or running the mower in such a way that it is not blown off the lawn. Pretty much, it's been a long time coming. We are way behind the curve in having a leaf blower law, and I can barely walk down a street without somebody asking me, when is there going to be a leaf blower restriction? And so I hope that you do pass one soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Welcome.
Andy Reinman, 122 Sarles Lane. So I guess first, full transparency. I mow my lawn with just a rotary push mower and hand shears. And while I think it would be wonderful to just have teams of landscapers throughout Pleasantville using that approach to managing lawns, I totally accept that that's not realistic and that's not what everyone wants. And I do want to just reiterate that this is very much a compromise. There's a lot of people that want this to go a whole lot further than it does, and this is really just like a small change to the status quo. No one's saying you can't manage your property the way you want to. We're just asking for a small tweak in how that's done during the summer. I have no interest in telling my neighbors how they should manage their property or what it should look like or anything like that. And what I expect in return is that how my neighbor chooses to manage that property doesn't impinge on my ability to do what I need to do or what I want to do on my property. And so as an example, last summer, I was working at home a lot, like a lot of people, and I started keeping track of how much extra I had to work each week because of the almost constant distractions from the loud noise from leaf blowers. The noises and the fumes from it have been a huge issue for me personally. And I estimate that in a normal week, I work anywhere between 60 and 70 hours, and I have to work an additional 4 to 6 hours every week to compensate for the distractions. Where I live, it's kind of dense, and there's like a constant noise of leaf blowers all day long. And so I fully recognize that there are landscapers here tonight that said that during the summers, they use them minimally. And maybe they do, but there's lots of landscapers where that is definitely not the case. And I have video footage of people in the summer on little tiny properties where there's at least 2 and sometimes 3 people with backpack leaf blowers blowing around grass clippings. And again, I'm not trying to tell anyone how they should manage their property or what it should look like. I just think when you're living in a community, especially a dense community like Pleasantville, it's fair to assume that what you do on your property should be done in a way that doesn't impair what other people can do on their property and how they can enjoy it. And I just want that point to be highlighted here, that I understand that there's an economic consequence maybe associated with this, but for a lot of people who are also working from home, there's a real economic consequence for them too. I shouldn't have to work almost an additional day each week because I have to run around my house closing windows and asking people to hang on for a minute while I'm in a Zoom meeting because I can't hear what they're saying or they can't hear what I'm saying. I have a little app on my phone that measures the decibel level inside my house with the windows closed. When one of my neighbors has their landscapers using their leaf blowers, the decibel level gets 75 or higher, which is about 20 decibels or 2 orders of magnitude higher than what healthy level should be, which is about 55, which is sort of a public health standard. Anyway, so I just want to reiterate that point again, which has been mentioned, that there's going to be maybe some economic hardship on one side if prices go up for managing land, managing people's yards. But there's a lot of us that have been dealing with that hardship for a long time because of the constant noise. And this isn't, this ordinance isn't a drastic change from the status quo. It doesn't change people's ability to do what they want on their lawn. It just changes a little bit the type of equipment that they should use. And I know how much effort has gone into this ordinance over the past couple of years and how much work you have gone through to try and find a middle ground, and that you see a lot of upset people on both sides probably suggest that you struck that balance. So thank you.
It's a pyrrhic victory. Okay, sir.
Bob Dillon, 60 Academy Street. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you to the trustees for listening. I don't want to take too much more of your time. I was one who worked in the city and left here at 5:30 in the morning and came back at 7:30 p.m. and didn't much think or care about what happened while I was away. COVID hits and all of a sudden I'm a work from home person, and I was stunned at the incessant, constant running of leaf blowers, and it made it difficult to work from home as well as just sit outside and enjoy quiet time on a Saturday. I was just stunned. I wasn't aware that is happening. I have friends on both sides of the aisle on this issue here. I respect everyone's opinion. I just think I'm in favor of some kind of restriction to just make Pleasantville more pleasant. I find that this takes away from our quality of life, and I would like to get it back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Todd, 99 Church Street, and I'm a member of the Conservation Advisory Council. I cannot add too much more. So this has been covered so well from people's, both from the scientific point of view and also from to the quality of life point of view. But I am definitely in favor of this, and think that I do feel it's not particularly fair to have to give an exception to the golf course. I think that they could do with electric or battery powered leaf blowers too. I don't think that we have to make an exception for them. I find that I've had the same problem with working from home and having to, be on a Zoom call with like 7 or 8 people, and all of a sudden, having to shift or move to a different room or go downstairs to the basement, which I've made a lot of calls in the basement because of these blowers. And I think that it's definitely the way to go. I mean, look at how many different municipalities have this already, and it's only smarter for air quality and also for peace of mind, especially during the summer months when people are outside and wanting to just enjoy things. And I think electric. We have an electric mower, which we just got when we moved here. It's been really great. And we also have a battery-powered leaf blower, which works really well when you need it in small areas. And I think people can adapt to that. I don't think it's out of the question. So thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Hi, Paul Loring, 3 Hayes Hill. I just want to say thank you. I think you've done a pretty good job finding that balance, and I'm in full support of what you've done. Thanks for putting the time into it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else in the room? We've got a couple of people who've been very patient here on Zoom. No other speakers in the room? All right. Oh. What is that, Nancy?
I just want to know.
You need to come to the mic because otherwise nobody's going to hear it at home.
Since so many municipalities have gone ahead and voted with the restrictions for how leaf blowers can be used, how have they adapted? Have they, it sounds as though from the people I know who live in those communities, they've adjusted quite well. It might have initially. So since I believe you said that you looked into this, what has been
So, I mean, as you've heard tonight, lots of communities have these restrictions at varying levels, including some that are pretty severe. As Mark indicated, I think Scarsdale is maybe the tightest in the county out of the 25 or so that have it. Enforcement is an issue everywhere. It's not as though this is the number one issue for enforcement. The goal would be that and I think it's been the goal in most communities, that rules are established that have been developed in the kind of manner we're trying to develop these, and we hope and expect that people respect them. Not everybody does. And that's been a challenge in other communities and remains so, but neither have I heard, and I've talked to quite a few of the mayors in communities that have had these regulations. Talked to the mayor of White Plains, there was some version of a leaf blower ban that dates back to 1994. They do some enforcement. They certainly respond to neighbor complaints, but for the most part, and I would hope that this would be the case here, we arrive at what is a compromise decision, and we would hope and expect that folks be respectful of one another and respond appropriately. So.
I think I'll just add that I think one thing that helps too, I mean, I've also been in conversation with people in different communities, and it's something that develops over time, but I think one thing that helps is really communicating well with the rest of the community and doing things to get people's investment. So it's not just about regulating, it's also about things like the rebate program that we just had. It's also about for instance, I've talked to Sustainable Westchester about hosting events for landscapers. They work with a consultant that consults with landscapers and, big industrial projects all across the country. And they're constantly vetting new electric equipment to see what the best equipment is, how the best way to use it, things like that. So for instance, hosting an event like that for local landscapers so that they can learn more about the equipment. I think, doing what we can to aid in that transition as well, I think is an important piece of it.
All right, let's go to, we've got two folks with their hands raised here. JT. Let us know who you are, where you live, and what you think. If you're speaking, we can't hear you. JT? All right. How about Tom Murphy? Are you there, Tom?
Do we promote them to panel?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions and a couple of comments. First, I would like to know, from a transparency perspective, how many complaints were actually received from community members that triggered this topic being discussed further?
So I don't know that we have.
You have?
I don't know that we've kept a tally of that. What we certainly do have, and they're part of the record, is all of the emails we've received through this whole process. I can tell you in my circumstance, as the mayor for a very long time, I've had many, many, many complaints over a period of years. I would guess more than 100 over a period of years. So.
Yeah, I had a tally somewhere, but I would have to dig into my research to tell you, but there were quite a few.
But in any kind of vote, I mean, at what level do you just look into something when it actually affects, a minority? If you look at most change that happens in life, a lot of times it's a minority that raises this, and that's what makes the change. So I think it's important to note that it's not just about, how we can't put a number like, 60% of the village population complained about this, is why we're making this vote. It's a point that's raised once it's harming someone that we have to at least address it and then exactly see how everyone feels about it. And that's what we're doing today.
Yeah, and I will add that it affects people in different ways and disproportionately, right? Like, it's one of those weird things where partly it depends on where you live. Like, I know some people who live on a cul-de-sac where virtually everybody manages their own lawns and they do it in a relatively low-key way, so they don't really feel the impact very much, whereas somebody else might live on a block that's, largely managed by landscapers that use sometimes multiple leaf blowers at the same time. They're bound to feel it a lot more. Also, we heard from somebody whose children are the autism spectrum. We've had a number of emails with people who have children with special needs, some of which are triggered by these leaf blowers. Some have asthma issues. So it's not going to affect everyone in the same way, right?
All right. You had further thoughts, Tom?
Yes, I do. So, speaking to the numbers, I forget the gentleman's name who spoke. I do think this is something that should go on the ballot and let the people of the town vote, because I believe what I'm hearing tonight, the board seems to have made their mind up with the folks that they have spoken to, and I don't think you're getting a true opinion of what the village of Pleasantville feels about a ban on the leaf blowers. That said, I understand and I agree with the goal of the law, but I disagree with how it's being the process here. I don't think there has been a good transition plan put together to introduce and implement a law like this. If you look at a lot of the states are trying to implement fully electric fleets, and they're projecting to do that in the next 15 to 20 years, where, to implement this law and I think the way it was written up, as soon as it gets approved, it's going to become official. So I think the way the implementation or transition plan for this has not been thought out very well. And I think that's something the board should consider before just making a final decision to implement the law.
Well, you bring up a good point, and that's something that we haven't actually discussed tonight. I had hoped that we were going to be able to vote on this ordinance much earlier in the year. A number of things intervened the way that they do in government politics. So we haven't actually talked about the implementation yet. I think that, this is definitely going to be a soft landing. We're not going to be expecting everybody to turn on a dime. If we do pass this law, we will have to talk about, is there a grace period? Exactly when are we expecting people to do this? And this summer, at any rate, I imagine would be, we would be going relatively easy on folks. Or
conceivably just establish a date certain that is at some point in the future for the purpose of transition.
But anyway, just to say that we haven't actually spoken to that issue tonight, but we're certainly aware of it.
Actually, I believe in the law, the effective date, section 6, states this chapter shall take effect immediately upon filling the office or filing with the office.
Yes,
Right.
that's the way it reads at the moment,
Right.
and that's one of the matters that we're thinking about, as you reported rightly. There needs to be some kind of a transition here.
But, you know, for example, Newcastle passed their legislation last year. You know, the first summer they were not handing out fines, yet they were reminding people, you know, they were sort of getting people used to the transition. So there's the implementation issue as well.
Indeed, we could just choose a date certain some point in the future, which is up for discussion. So. All right.
So again, that wasn't explained, so that's my point. The transition plan
Yes, understood.
needs to be part of how you're introducing this law.
Yeah,
I agree.
And then I don't know, there's another question that was put in the chat. I don't know if you want to respond to that one.
Which is
I
what?
haven't seen the chat.
You did respond to my question, but another member posted a question. If you want me to read it, I'll read it, or you can read it and answer it, but I would like to see the answer to their question.
Which was the question about establishing a difference between the requirements for businesses and private homeowners?
Is that the one where it questions the percentage of gas?
Yeah, what
blowers
percent of
used
gas
by
blowers are
businesses?
private homeowners versus commercial business accounts? Rechargeable equipment is not realistic for a business owner. Can this ban exclude business owners? Our belief is that absent some specific public policy piece, which you might or might not agree with, but has in other communities allowed country clubs to use bans, you can't make a distinction on who owns it. That is to say, you can't say a business can't use it and a homeowner can, which some folks have said to me, and neither can you say a homeowner can't use it, but a business can. So that's where we were coming from on that, and that was where the country club exception has a sunset date in it. But again, as we've heard tonight, not everybody agrees with that.
Right.
So just the final comment I want to make about that is I disagree with you putting the sunset time frame. You've considered the country club, but again, you didn't consider the transition for the citizens of the community.
Which we will.
And
Your
then,
point well taken.
Just one other comment I want to make, because there was another question I had before a different board in the community, and every time I tried to compare Pleasantville to another community, I was told that's not Pleasantville. Pleasantville is Pleasantville. You can't compare Pleasantville to the other communities. So I just think you need to be aware of and make sure you have the facts to show how these other communities that you're comparing to Pleasant View when you're talking about introducing a new law, you have the numbers and the facts made available so that we know we're comparing oranges to oranges and apples to apples.
All right. So
Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's time and all the comments from
Likewise.
everyone tonight. Thank you.
Trustee Peppard, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
I'm sorry I can't be there tonight due to COVID-related things here at the house. I've really been grateful for the many points of view expressed, and I think I just want to say a couple comments in response to a few threads that have come up. I think one is about the pace of change, and I guess I'm a little bit surprised at some of the comments about this because it's been a multi-year process just on this board. Not to mention, I looked up and I found evidence from 2011 that the board had talked about a leaf blower potential proposal, and the grid that Nicole that you provided shows such a depth of history here in the surrounding areas that have gorgeous landscapes in Bedford and in Rye and many other towns that are not too far from us that have similar or in some cases more strict restrictions than we're laying out. And the second thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that this is absolutely a compromise. When we were first discussing it, I myself was resistant to anything that would restrict use in the fall. I was one of the outskirts properties, or I guess I still am. I've lived in 2 homes here in Pleasantville, but both was and am currently one of the outskirts properties that one of the landscapers brought up. And the fall is a completely different story, which is why they're called leaf blowers. It's a very different experience. And so the fact that we do have kind of a first step ban in this summer, a first step restriction that you couldn't really be much smaller as a step toward more peace and quiet and better air quality in the village in the summer. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to express my thoughts about that. I think the pace has been quite good. I think we have had the large scale survey of about 500 respondents, and then open lines of communication for feedback all throughout. And it has been around 50-50. I think the survey was a little bit tilted toward not restricting, but then the other feedback we received is about 2-to-1 toward restricting. So it's been a mix based on the feedback we've got. And as to the referendum question, my final point, I don't think there's a strong tradition of direct democracy on these sorts of matters. And so what we have is a representative democracy, and we do our best to gather as much information as we can through all the channels that we have. And I think I'm pleased with the amount and the style of feedback that we've received to get a sense of the town and try to balance out people's rights. So I just wanted to say a few words all at once there, since I know I'm on Zoom and I didn't want to chime in too often.
Thank you, sir. All right, so the last hand up is JT. I asked previously, are you there, JT? If you are, no word. Ben Sarabin raised his hand. Ben?
Yes, it's Ben Sarabin, 44 Sutton Place, Pleasantville. I had actually posted something in the Q&A, but I guess my concern was, I also, after listening to everyone, I do have concerns that the country club is getting unfair treatment. And so I think they should be treated in the same way residents are. I'm also not a fan of the school district getting fully exempt. I know they do have one backpack powered electric leaf blower. I've seen that. So I think that the school district should also not be getting.
Well, they're not fully exempt.
They're not getting fully exempt.
Nor have they wanted.
The exemption is specifically for the turf fields when they have a really heavy rain. But and then I also just wanted to say in response to the country club, that has been a thread throughout, and I think that's probably something we're going to discuss.
Yeah, that's definitely something I want to discuss more.
I mean, the school has been.
Personally, am open to.
The school has been. Don't get me wrong, the school district has been very cooperative, but they have the issue of having to redistribute the rubber fill on the turf field, and that's an issue for them, and that's what that carve out was about.
But I think that they're also on board with complying with the law otherwise, and working with our parks department in the transition from gas powered to electric equipment.
Yeah, no, otherwise I'm supportive of it. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let me try one more time. If you are there, JT, your hand is still up. All right, I'm going to lower your hand and make the assumption that nobody else is seeking to speak on this subject. Is that true? Sounds it. All right, so let me suggest this way forward. We're shortly to adjourn the public hearing, but not to close it, with the thought that we will close the public hearing at our next meeting, which is Monday, May 23. In the interim, you can speak to any of us directly or via email. Our emails are all on the village website at pleasantville-ny.gov, but the even more direct, to add something if you feel there's a point to be made or you just wish to be heard, you can send an email to leafblowers@pleasantville-ny.gov. Alyssa on the third floor is collecting those and making sure that they are both added to the record and then sent to every member of the board. And so that's the best way, A, to make your point a part of the permanent record, and B, to make sure we see it. So leaf blowers at pleasantville-ny.gov. So long as my colleagues are in agreement with this, can I make a motion to adjourn but not close the public hearing to our next meeting? Yes?
I'd like to say something.
Sure, come to the mic.
So,
We need your name and address, and then,
my name is Marilyn Lamb. My parents are Jose
Uh-huh.
and Bertina Hernandez.
Yes.
They own a business here. They've been living here for over 60 years.
Uh-huh.
I live at 1 Court Street. They live at 15 Lincoln Avenue. I live on 1 Court Street. There's not a day that goes by that not one person stops at my house and asks who does my lawn and asks for their information,
Right.
contact info. That's my dad. So I feel, honestly, I wasn't going to speak. I don't like speaking in public, but I just am a little bit concerned about the fact that you guys sound like you've already made a decision, but you haven't really gotten the opinion of the whole entire town. And I feel that you should consider asking everybody before you make a decision. There should be no exceptions. Country Club, my kids are in the school district. I love our school district. I don't think they should have an exception. If business landscapers have to stop using leaf blowers, so should everybody else. Very concerned. I've heard a lot of things about, oh well, if you can't run a business without the leaf blowers, oh well. Well, my dad's 80 and he's still running his business. And nobody's had a problem for many years. He does not run a big company. It's just him, my brother, and maybe one other guy. They're in my house for about 10 minutes and they leave and they go on. If they had to use an electric blower or a rake, they would never be able to make a living. I heard somebody else saying, oh well, so we take food away from their plates. Well, how are they going to make a living? Really start considering. I feel like you've targeted the landscapers. Why does Pleasantville have to follow every town? You've never done that before. I don't understand why you have to start now. And these rebates, are you willing to fund the landscapers? We would love to if we had that kind of money. I think that there is
Exactly.
an effort
And
on
you
the
don't.
state. But
Nicole,
you know, just to be
I'm not
clear,
done yet.
Marilyn,
Nicole,
nobody's
I'm not done yet.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
You have to let
Yeah.
me speak. I consider you a good friend. But I do feel that the board is becoming very biased and they're making a decision without hearing everybody else. And it upsets me. I've been here for many years. I was born here. I came back with my kids. My parents have lived here for over 60 years. I really think you need to reconsider this law in making such a quick decision. I understand you've been discussing it behind the scenes for many years, but you know what? They're not hurting you guys. And everybody should be able to make a decision on how they should care for their own lawn. It's not up to you. It is it's very, to me, I feel like you're targeting the landscapers, honestly. And my parents run a very nice, quiet business. They don't bother anyone. They deal with all the complaints whenever a homeowner calls and says, ooh, you left a few grass clippings on my driveway. I want you to come back and clean that up. So, you know, you just have to really consider everybody's opinion on this, and I don't think you are.
So could I just respond to a couple of those points? First is, I've lived here for 36 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I've sat here on the board, I'm appalled to admit, for 21 years, 14 as mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And to say that no one is hurt by this is just not true.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I could share with you the emails from people who have come home from surgery, for people who are dealing with cancer treatment, for people who are infirm in some way,
Mm-hmm.
whose capacity to recover in their own home has, by their reports, not mine, been badly, badly harmed. And I'm sure you're sympathetic to that, as I am, and obviously those circumstances, we hope, are relatively few and far between, but not so few and far between that they aren't happening all the time. Add to that folks who are simply affected badly by the fact that they can't enjoy the quiet comfort of their own home for significant periods of time. Everyone says it only takes 10 minutes. Well, I can tell you, I mean, I've watched this for an escalation of this for 35 years. It's not just 10 minutes. It might be 10 minutes at one house, but it's 10 minutes riding down the middle of the street. Maybe not your father. I have no doubt you guys run a great business. I don't want to hurt anybody.
A very small business.
I don't want to hurt anybody. But I don't want to hurt the people who are being harmed by this noise as well. And so we're trying to craft something that lets everybody live, right? I don't think we're putting your family's business out of business. Certainly the reports I've gotten and talked to a lot of people, not just behind the scenes, but up front. We've had many, many public settings. The suggestion that this has been some sort of a backroom deal is just completely unfair for a bunch of people who feed themselves to this to try to do the right thing by this community. There is no doubt that there is no answer that we can arrive at that's going to be satisfactory to a lot of people. A lot of people want no change. A lot of people want 100% change. No matter what we do, a significant number of people will be harmed. That said, when people are being legitimately harmed, when people's personal rights in their homes are being affected, that has to be balanced against people's personal rights to decide how they want to maintain their lawn. If somebody, if those issues collide, we're here to try to find a way out of it. And so I will say, and I certainly will speak for myself, the suggestion that this is some sort of elitist effort is painful to me. I understand why people say it, and I mean, you could flip that around if you were so inclined and say that the use of lawn services and the expectations of perfect lawns is itself elitist. I'm not trying to pass judgment on anybody. I'm just trying to make it possible for folks who live here to comfortably do so to the extent that we can make that happen.
And I want my father to make a living.
I know you do.
Let me speak to that, Marilyn.
And I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. So also, you're talking about the noise of the leaf blowers. But you're allowing construction going around, and I'm not going to get off topic. But I just want to let you know there's a lot of construction going on, also on the sawmill, that I hear when I wake up every morning. Why is it okay for that to be approved, but not the leaf blowers?
Because we have no to build highways, and people have to be able to renovate their homes or build new buildings.
Yeah.
I mean, if the answer is to say nothing can be done that makes noise, then that's not a way forward either.
But also that's something we have no power over whatsoever. I just want to speak to the harming landscapers. I want to make it clear that this is by no means our intention is to harm landscapers. And we feel, having spoken to landscapers, having spoken to people in municipalities where these laws have been in place in some cases for over a decade, that it is entirely possible for landscapers to continue doing their business without a negative impact on their success, on their business success. It's not as if people in Pleasantville are suddenly no longer going to be interested in having their lawns and their properties maintained, right? What we're proposing is an adjustment in the way that properties are maintained during the summer months when the heavy lifting of leaf blowers doesn't take place, right? So it's an adjustment. It's a sort of a cultural adjustment in some ways as much as it is a kind of a practical adjustment, right? But it may seem like a big hurdle, but it's one that has already been done, in many other places, which is why we know that it's a reasonable thing to do. If we could, subsidize professional grade equipment for landscapers so that they could make the transition overnight to electric equipment, we would love to do that. In fact, I have been in conversation with George Latimer on the county level, and we're in conversation with people on the state level to see if those things are coming down the pike. But I don't think that those things are even necessary for what we're proposing, because leaf blowers just simply aren't needed as much during this period.
Spring cleanup still goes in to at least most of May. So I mean
really,
and, you
like,
know, they do, and maybe that's what I think you should do. I think you should get the opinion of every homeowner before you pass this law. It sounds like you guys have already.
Sorry, can I just
made a
ask you to tell us? No, I want
And then
you.
I'm
I want you to
gonna do
speak
one
more.
other thing.
I don't want to lose. I'll let you speak. I just
Mhm.
want to ask you, when you say get the opinion of every homeowner, do you mean go door to door, or we've done surveys? This is a third public input
But
session.
you've even said that it's 50-50. So you really
No,
don't
no. I'm
have,
specifically. What do you want us to do to get more input?
But maybe you should, like, even when you said that you sent out a survey, you said, 50% were opposed and some 50% are for it. So why is for it?
Well,
No, but I'm
it's
asking-
actually a little bit more nuanced than that, because what we were asking questions like about then was an earlier iteration of the law, which is how we arrived at this compromise. So what was originally proposed was a ban on all leaf blowers during the summer months. A majority was definitely opposed to that. However, a majority was also in favor of transitioning from gas to electric. And so, so this has had many steps in the process, and that's part of how we arrived at this compromise.
Now, have you talked to landscapers?
Yes.
And
well, and there's a range of views, right? I mean, certainly a lot of landscapers, are very familiar with this equipment, and they're uncomfortable about making the transition to electric equipment. But not all landscapers. I mean, some, first of all, have been doing it for a while. I've also been working a lot with our parks department, and that's where I'm learning more about the professional grade equipment, what's required, how the batteries work, what's required in charging them, and so on. And there's definitely a transition to be made, but again, the leaf blowers just don't need to be used that much in the summer months. So it's a relatively minor kind of rethinking that we're talking about.
takes a lot more labor to rake.
Well, nobody's
lawn.
proposing raking lawns. Nobody's proposing raking lawns.
But during those months,
why would you rake a lawn in July?
you're still doing landscaping work, and most customers that have lawn care want their yards to look pristine. I mean, they're paying for a service. They don't want my father to come in and just mow the lawn and leave the clippings everywhere. They're not going to feel like they're getting their money's worth. So you have to understand, if their grass gets on the driveway, they want that cleaned off. If it gets on the sidewalk right in front of their property, they're going to want that cleaned off. They're not, you have to understand that these landscapers get calls left and right when a homeowner has paid for a service and it doesn't look like they've done anything. I know there's some people here that, believe in leaving the clippings as is, but not everybody's like that. I mean, if you're going to pay for a service, you're going to want it to look nice. I
agree.
get
Not everybody
compliments
agrees on
every
the right
single
way to
day.
maintain properties. But
I have to be honest with you. I just feel you're targeting the landscapers. And I know that I'm taking this very personally because my family has made a living doing that line of business.
Sure.
They're a representative here, and I want to make sure that their voices are heard. They don't feel comfortable coming up here to speak for themselves, so I'm going to advocate for them. I just want you to really think about talking to a lot of the landscapers before you make this decision.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's all I ask.
Yeah.
Yes, Michael.
Could I say something from Zoom here?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, I'm Michael Pepper. I'm really grateful for your comments. And while I really don't agree with the use of the word targeting at all, I would say there is a truth that the scale of leaf blower activity from some landscaping services is what created the level of complaints that led to this primary discussion. So that there is some truth in that. It's a question of where a difference of degree becomes a difference of kind. When you have 4 to 6 gas powered leaf blowers, one of which is a walk behind, operating at the same time, in the middle of the day, it is a major effect on the property owners up to 800 feet away. And we've read and consulted with people on studies about how all of this, how this affects quality of life. So I guess I just, like I said, the law is not intended to isolate any one, source of the problem, but the vast majority of the complaints we've received are about large-scale landscape companies' usage. And on my decibel meters and my time that I measure, it's usually about 45 minutes, and it's always 70 to 80 decibels on adjacent properties. So it's a pretty significant noise and duration.
My dad runs a small business.
Well, he's probably not an offender in that category.
Yeah, I mean,
but
he doesn't have a big business where 5 people come at one property and use a lot of machines. So I feel that, unfortunately, I'm sorry that I used the word targeted. I feel my dad is being targeted. He's just trying to make a living. He's 80 years old. So I'm going to fight for him. I'm just saying, yes, I understand. I hear you. I agree with you that you shouldn't have 5 lawnmowers or 5 leaf blowers at one place at one time. He doesn't run that type of business. And I just feel that this law is going to hurt him.
There are laws in some other towns that speak to the number of blowers used.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of where you're headed in your thinking?
I'm just saying that, my dad runs a small business and he doesn't use a lot of leaf blow. It's him and my brother, And
Right.
Unfortunately, if they can't use the leaf blower and they have to rake or find another way to do it, they're just not going to be able to make as much money as they are able to do now. And you just can't get as many houses done in one day if you don't use that blower. And I really don't think an electric blower or a battery operated blower can work at the level of...
So I hear you, and I sympathize with you, and I respect what your family has done, and the idea of continuing this at age 80 is really, really impressive. But what do you say to the people that say, you say you can't get as many houses done if you don't use blowers, and people who are harmed by the use of blowers say, I shouldn't have to sacrifice my peace of mind so that someone else can make more money. I mean, that's where we are, right?
It's not about making more money, it's about making just an honest living. He's not in this business to make a huge profit.
Okay, I have no doubt it's an honest living. I deeply, deeply respect that.
Yeah, I just want
But
you to think about that before you make a decision. That's all.
All right.
That it's not everybody that has, we're not a company that has many lawnmowers and leaf blowers and making all the noise. He's just trying to make a living. And he moves from one house to the next and he doesn't want to bother anyone. And as a matter of fact, he's actually a landscaper that, if a client calls and says, you know what, my child naps at this time, can you come at another time? He's very sensitive to that. And I guess that, just think about those business owners that really don't want to hurt anybody. They're just making a living.
Understood.
Okay?
Thank you. All right. Let me just, my amateur Zoom directing here. There we go. Okay, so I appreciate all that's been said. Again, let me reiterate that folks can add further comment if they would like to via email at leafblowers@pleasantville-ny.gov. Can I make a motion to adjourn but not close this public hearing to our next meeting on Monday, May 23.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Thank you all for your time. You're welcome to stay with us as we make our way through our dry as dust resolutions.
Shouldn't that be a requirement now?
That would be a sign of caring. All right. Paul, number 134. Let me share my screen here. Yes. I will share my screen.
Thanks for being willing to stay here for so long, everybody.
Thank you.
I mean, we're a little sad that you're leaving now, but.
There we go. Number 134, Paul.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the minutes of the regular meeting held on April 25th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments, corrections, questions? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved.
Aye.
Nicole, 135.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendments for fiscal year ending 2022 as listed below. Budget transfers in the general fund, $10,000 from contingent transfer to capital, $805 from snow removal overtime to sanitary sewer overtime, $376 from Clinton Street Center part-time to Clinton Street Center repairs, $11,645 from parks equipment to parks outside service, $300 from camp supplies to preschool rec supplies, $15 from employee benefits workers comp insurance to employee benefits life insurance. Increased revenue and expense capital fund, $10,000, interfund transfer from general fund for the Memorial Plaza project.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion
Aye.
approved. 136, David.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the abstract for payment of claims dated May 9th, 2022 for fiscal year ending 2022, covering check numbers 103,556 to 103,730. From the General Fund, $146,743.56. From the Special Purpose Fund, $2,050. From the Water Fund, $15,057.43. From the Capital Fund, $63,013.28. From the Refuse Fund, $20,557.65. For a total of $247,421.92. Payment of claims is attached.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 137, Michael.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the abstract for payment of claims dated May 9th, 2022 for fiscal year 2023, covering check numbers 103731 to 103744. There's a typo there, Eric, I think.
It's I think it should be 10371, right? To 10374.
Great, 10371 to 10374. From the general fund, $30,000. $30,808.70.
Is there a second?
Second as amended.
Again, this is a payment that reflects the fiscal year that begins June 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Paul, back to you. 138.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the mayor to sign the tax warrant for the fiscal year of 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 139, Nicole.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the request from the Pleasantville Recreation Department to hold the Memorial Day Parade on Monday, May 30th, 2022 at 10 a.m. Said parade route to begin at the Bedford Road School, proceed down Bedford Road to Memorial Plaza, concluding with a ceremony at the War Monuments. And further resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the police chief to post no parking signs along the parade route and in Memorial Plaza and to tow all vehicles violating the temporary parking restrictions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Please join us on Memorial Day, Monday, May 30. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. David, 140.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby approves a request from the Pleasantville Day Community Scholarship Fund to hold their annual 5K walk run for education on Saturday, May 21st, 2022, and further resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the police chief to close Washington Avenue between Edgewood Avenue to Manville Road from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. on May 21st, 2022, to post no parking signs along the route and to tow all vehicles violating the temporary parking restrictions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Again, we're happily back to the traditional beginning of Pleasantville Day with the 5K walk run for education. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 141, Michael.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the acceptance of the corrected tax rate of 99.9244.
Is there a second? rounding error, Mr. Marcy?
Yeah, so that was just incorrect in the resolution, but correct in the tax sheets and.
At the level of the third decimal point.
Correct, yep. The thousands, please. So.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 142, Paul.
Result that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign an agreement with J. O'Connell and Associates for grant writing services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Eric, you want to just give the thumbnail sketch? This is, I think, a great move that all of us support.
Yep, so this is a grant writing firm. One of them that we spoke to comes highly recommended, located in upstate New York, which is good because most of their clients are from upstate, so we want to avoid grant writers who represent one region, so you don't want competitive projects. But we are looking to engage. There's obviously a lot of money on the federal and state level for various grant programs. And we think it's a good investment with a focus on infrastructure and water infrastructure in particular.
Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. That was Paul, right?
Yep.
So 143 is Nicole. You're getting the long ones.
Whereas negotiations have been ongoing between the bargaining team for the Village of Pleasantville, the village, and the bargaining team for the Civil Service Employees Association, Inc., Local 1000 AFS CME AFL-CIO, the CSEA, for a successor to the June 1st, 2019 to May 31st, 2022 agreement between the parties. And whereas those negotiations have resulted in a tentative agreement contained in a memorandum of agreement dated April 22nd, 2022, which has been ratified by the membership of the CSEA. And whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville has reviewed the terms of the memorandum of agreement and finds that a settlement consistent with the terms contained therein is in the best interest of the village. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby approves and ratifies the terms of the aforementioned memorandum of agreement and hereby authorizes the mayor or the village administrator to execute a collective bargaining agreement consistent with the terms thereof.
Is there a second?
Second.
Eric, why don't you just give the thumbnail sketch there? You've been working on this for a long time with the
Sure.
assistance of...
Yep, we've come to terms with our CSEA employees that represent our clerical and DPW employees. We have a scale and B scale wage rate. So the B scale, which is several steps behind pay rate, 3% over 3 years, with the A scale employees getting 2.75, essentially averaged out over 3 years. Think it's fair, we think it's market rate, and we're happy to come to terms.
And appreciate the efforts and assistance of the CSEA team here in Pleasantville at arriving at this. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion approved. 144, David.
Resolve the Board of Trustees hereby institutes no parking every Saturday from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. from April 2nd, 2022 to April 1st, 2023 as follows. Memorial Plaza parking lot, both sides from the gazebo to the end of the parking lot southerly direction. Memorial Plaza parking lot on the train track side from the gazebo in a northerly direction covering 8 spaces. Memorial Plaza roadway from the gazebo in the southerly direction covering 3 median spaces. Memorial Plaza roadway from Bedford Road in a northerly direction covering 3 median spaces. Further resolved that the market boundary map attached hereto is officially adopted and the police department is hereby authorized to post no parking signs and tow all vehicles in violation of this temporary parking restriction. Market boundary map is attached.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this is just reflecting the fact that the market has moved from the north end of the plaza to the south end.
We had previously adopted, there had been some changes in the parking regulations, so that's why we've updated the resolution. Mr. Mayor, would you want to amend further for the spaces that the market is requesting for the vans? It is the 2 spaces on Bedford Road in front of Tudor Time.
That is acceptable to me. Is that acceptable to my colleagues?
Yes.
Sure.
So the musicians can unload right into the
No, that makes sense.
Okay, so the resolution would include whatever the right verbiage should be, but in essence, call out the 2 metered spaces in front of tutor time. That is the easternmost 2 spaces opposite Memorial Plaza.
That's correct.
All right. Is the mover and seconder agreeable to that?
Yes.
All right. All in favor as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 145. Michael.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees authorizes the village administrator or designee to execute the custom sponsorship agreement for the Pleasantville Music Festival attached here 2 with Spectrum Designs.
Is there a second?
Second.
Delighted to have Spectrum Designs involved. For those who may not know, Spectrum Designs has taken up residence at the corner of Martling Avenue and Tompkins, and they produce all manner of collateral material, including T-shirts, hats, cups, mugs, etc. And their mission is to employ folks on the autistic spectrum and give them stable and productive work environment. So it's a great addition to the village of Pleasantville, and delighted to have them as one of the sponsors and one of the participants in the nonprofit section at the music festival. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Paul, 146.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees authorizes the use of the remaining NYSERD Clean Energy Communities Grant Program funds in the amount of $2,000 for the purposes of Climate Smart Rebate Incentive Program for village residents.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this takes the last 2,000 and feeds it into the program that allows residents to take advantage.
The program has been very popular, and so we went through the $3,000 very quickly. And so we've decided to allocate the final 2,000 to the
That's great.
program as well.
That's great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 147.
Is that me, really?
It is you.
Okay. It's a good thing I'm so awake. Okay. Whereas on April 9th, 2022, Governor Hochul signed Chapter 56 of Laws of 2022, which creates Section 103A of the New York State Open Meetings Law to make permanent until July 1st, 2022, the expanded use of video conferencing by public bodies to conduct open meetings under extraordinary circumstances, regardless of a declaration of emergency. And whereas under the legislation for 60 days after the effective date of Chapter 56, accordingly through June 8th, 2022, public bodies are authorized to meet and take such action authorized by law without permitting public in-person access to meetings, and authorize such meetings to be held remotely by conference call or similar service, provided that the public has the ability to view or listen to such proceeding, and that such meetings are recorded and later transcribed. And whereas after June 8th, 2022, a governing body that wishes to allow for remote attendance by its members at locations that do not allow for in-person physical attendance by the public is required to adopt a local law. And whereas the Village of Pleasantville Board of Trustees desires to adopt a local law to authorize members of the village's local public bodies to participate in meetings via video conference in a manner consistent with the authority granted in Public Officers Law, paragraph 103A, and whereas a proposed local law was introduced on May 9th, 2022, and now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville shall hold a public hearing on Monday, May 23rd, 2022 at 8 p.m. at Village Hall, 80 Wheeler Avenue, Pleasantville, New York, 10570, to consider a proposed local law to allow members of all public bodies of the Village of Pleasantville to participate in meetings via video conference.
Is there a second?
We're all just edified.
Can you repeat that?
In the hypothetical that we have more people to speak about leaf blowers on May 23rd, perhaps they will have an opinion on this.
Yeah, they're going to love this public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. David, 148.
Resolved the Board of Trustees approves a request by the Superintendent of Recreation and Parks to establish annually a seasonal petty cash fund in the amount of $100 for the purpose of making change at the village pool.
Is there a second?
Second.
Pretty straightforward. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Back to you, Mr. Peppard, 149.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the request from Jack Tobin, 108 Sarles Lane, to hold a block party and thereby close Sarles Lane from house number 108 to 144 on Saturday, May 14th, 2022, from 10 a.m. until 8 p.m.
Is there a second?
Second.
Have a good time. Sarles Lane, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Eric, we were going to discuss in a work session and didn't get to it, the BFJ planning proposal for the R2A district.
Yeah.
But do we need a resolution to accept that?
Yes, would be good form.
If so, can I suggest that we add that?
Sure.
So, folks, if you go back to the work session, we asked BFJ Planning to come to give us a proposal to undertake an initial zoning study of the R2A zoning district along Bedford Road.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just read that first paragraph. To address concerns about the potential for development through subdivision that may not be in keeping with the scale and density originally envisioned. As we understand, the village seeks a concise analysis of the site's existing conditions, development potential, to determine whether potential revisions are warranted. Long story short, it's a preliminary review. The detail of this proposal, this one-page proposal, can be found for anyone who cares to see it on our Novus agenda site, but it's an upset fee of $5,000 to be billed on a time and expense basis, and I do feel as though it's appropriate for us to proceed with that. So rather than lose any time in that respect, if you guys are okay with it, I suggest that we add one more resolution to our agenda and vote to agree to that $5,000 proposal.
Okay.
I agree.
I just have one question, Peter.
Yeah.
Is this $5,000 going to tell us that there's one property affected, or do we think that there are others that are going to be analyzed?
Well, they're going to look at the whole zone. Obviously, as we all well know, the Girl Scout property is a prime concern, as we heard, as we already knew, but heard from Bernie. But they're going to look at the whole district and, among other things, address the question of whether they see issues that might prevail elsewhere along the district, and also give some thought to the question of what one might do to address the concerns.
And they're making a recommendation, which is helpful to see.
As in the later paragraph, we'll outline potential approaches to the zoning revisions that may address the identified issues. So it's a preliminary effort, does not include drafting of zoning revisions or the approvals for such revisions, but I do think the sooner we do this, the better. As you know, there's been the request from Bernie Gordon that we undertake a moratorium. I think there are concerns there both in favor and potentially opposing that idea, but we need to get those on the table as soon as we can. Does that feel like it answers the question you asked?
Yeah, it just didn't seem like there were that many lots that could potentially be affected, so I didn't know
Well, there aren't, except
how much
that
we were getting on the hook for with BFJ.
Right.
It's only a preliminary bill of $5,000.
Well, a proposed, you can't go and rezone a single lot. That's spot zoning. And so the question would be, even if the concerns are heavily focused on a single lot, you would be required to enact zoning that affected lots of other lots. For example, one thing one might do is establish, if one wanted to proceed with this, I'm not recommending it, but one thing one might do is establish some dimensional requirement that said, okay, the idea of this R2A zoning district, which was enacted all those many years ago, all along Bedford Road, was intended for properties that front Bedford Road. And if a subdivided lot is created that's cleaved off, what happens then? You could address that by saying, okay, only the first, 100 feet are covered by that zoning, which would mean you'd be substantially rezoning a whole lot of properties and throwing a whole lot of properties into pre-existing non-conforming status. But it would be one way to get to that problem. That would require a big and pretty elaborate process to enact that kind of zoning. So, at any rate, I think BFJ is well situated to get their arms around and thus help us get our arms around what's the scope of the problem, what are the potential risks we confront, and what are the potential remedies if we do identify those risks.
All right.
All right, so can I add and make a motion number 150 to authorize the village administrator to sign the proposal from BFJ Planning for an initial review of the R20 zoning district? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Done. That being the last of our resolutions, is there any further comment from anyone, any of us, or anyone who has hung around as long as they have?
I think there's anyone here, right?
No, we still have a few attendees. Thank you.
Do we really?
Thank you for your.
Yeah, 12.
Thank you for your.
Thanks for. So my comment is thanks for sticking with us. More than one of us has gotten emotionally involved in the conversation tonight at some point or another, but just realize that we're listening to all of you and that we're spending a lot of time on these things, and so that's the only thing that really I think affects us personally is if people say you haven't really thought about this, because we can get it wrong, but it's not for a lack of thinking.
And also, I think it's important, as it's been said, we are not targeting anyone. There's no target in this. It's more trying to come up with a solution to a very, very complicated problem.
Yeah.
All right, Eric, we had thought about an executive session. We do not
don't
need it.
No, there's that last work session item on the parking restriction request.
Yes. Okay, so.
I sent an email on that.
Great. With that, we'll end our regular meeting. We thank you all for your attention. We'll be back 2 weeks from today, Monday, May 23, with the continuation and likely the closing of the leaf blower hearing. Again, leaf blowers at pleasantville-ny.gov is a place to send an email if you have an opinion. And also the thrilling public hearing on the subject of the open meetings law. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you and good night.